Tonight, you will discover a powerful secret. The wisdom of Zen has long prepared an antidote for the emptiness within. For 2,500 years, since the Buddha's parinirvana, countless seekers have encountered the very feelings you hold now. Over the next 3 hours, let us traverse bamboo forests, ancient temples, and mountain streams, through 10 stories that reveal this emptiness is not a flaw, but a gateway to awakening. Adjust your pillow, let your shoulders sink naturally, and now breathe with me. Inhale as cool air brushes your nostrils. Exhale as all tension dissolves with the current of breath. Let us journey now to a mountain monastery nestled between emerald peaks, where the first light of dawn seeps through a canopy of bamboo. The air carries the earthy scent of damp soil and the faint sweetness of jasmine blooming beside the stone. Path. Listen closely. You can hear the rustle of leaves as a gentle breeze passes through the grove. And far below, the distant murmur of a mountain stream winding its way through smooth stones. In this quiet sanctuary lives a young monk named Kenji, whose brow has been furrowed for weeks. Each morning, as he polishes the wooden floors of the meditation hall, his mind circles like a sparrow, unable to find a branch to land on. Why can't I hold on to joy? He whispers to himself, his rag moving in slow circles over the polished wood. When I feel peace during Zazen meditation, it slips through my fingers like water. When laughter comes during meal times, it fades before I can grasp it. My heart feels hollow, as if there's a hole that can never be filled. Kenji's footsteps echo as he climbs the moss-covered stone steps to the master's hut. The door is slightly ajar, and through the gap he sees Master Hiroshi sitting cross-legged beside an open window, his hands resting gently on his knees. Sunlight gilds the edges of his gray robes, and his eyes are half closed, as if he's listening to a sound only he can hear. "Enter, Kenji," the master says without opening his eyes. "Your restlessness has been louder than the temple bells these past days." Kenji slides the door open and bows deeply, his forehead nearly touching the cool stone floor. "Master, I come to seek your wisdom. My heart feels like a broken bamboo basket. No matter what I pour into it, nothing remains. Joy, peace, contentment, they all leak out, leaving only emptiness. What is wrong with me?" Master Hiroshi opens his eyes, which hold the calm of a still lake. He gestures to a stool beside him, and Kenji sits, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. The master reaches beside him and lifts a simple bamboo basket woven roughly, with wide gaps between the strips, and holds it up for Kenji to see. "Do you know what this is?" he asks. "Of course, Master, a basket, but it's poorly made. It can't hold anything." "Ah," the master says, rising slowly. "Then you will help me with a task. The kitchen well is dry, and we need water for the morning. Tea, take this basket and bring me a full load from the stream." Kenji stares at him, confusion clouding his features. "But master, that's impossible. The basket has holes. The water will flow right out." "Nevertheless," Hiroshi says softly, "that is your task. Go now and return when you have filled it." The path to the stream winds through dense bamboo, their stalks creaking softly in the wind. Kenji walks slowly, the basket swinging in his hand, his mind churning with frustration. "This is pointless," he mutters. "The master knows this basket can't hold water. Is he testing me? Mocking me? Does he not understand how much this emptiness hurts?" As he reaches the stream, sunlight dances on its surface, turning the water into liquid gold. Dragonflies hover above the shallows, their wings iridescent blue. Kenji kneels at the bank and dips the basket into the water. It fills briefly, then begins to empty, the water rushing through the gaps like a miniature waterfall. By the time he stands, only a few drops remain, clinging to the bamboo strips. He tries again, submerging the basket deeper, lifting it quickly, but the result is the same. Water slips away, leaving the basket nearly empty. See? He says aloud, as if the master can hear him. Impossible. But something in him, perhaps the memory of his master's calm gaze, urges him to keep trying. He walks back to the monastery, the basket swinging emptily, and finds Hiroshi sitting where he left him, now pouring tea into small ceramic cups. "Master, I tried," Kenji says, placing the basket at Hiroshi's feet. "But as I knew, it can't hold water. The holes are too large." Hiroshi takes a sip of tea, his eyes never leaving Kenji's face. "Did you notice anything as you carried the basket?" "Back?" Kenji frowns. "Notice what? That I was failing? That the water kept escaping?" "Look at the basket," Hiroshi says, gesturing to it with his teacup. Kenji bends down and examines it. Something is different. The bamboo strips, once dull and marked with dirt, now glisten, cleaned by the rushing water. The small bits of mud and debris that had been trapped between the weaves are gone. "It's clean," he says, surprised. "Ah," Hiroshi says, smiling. "So the basket did hold something after all. Not water, perhaps, but the cleaning power of water. You thought its purpose was to contain, but its true purpose was to be made pure by the very thing that seemed to escape it." Kenji sits silently, the words settling around him like mist. "Your heart is like this basket, Kenji," the master continues. "You think its purpose is to hold on to things joy, peace, pleasure, and when they slip away, you call it broken. But what if that is not its purpose at all? What if the holes are not flaws, but channels for purification? What if the emptiness you feel is simply the space through which life flows, cleaning, refreshing, renewing?" He leans forward, his voice softening. "The Buddha taught that all things are impermanent anicca, Pali for impermanence. Yet we spend our lives trying to make them last. We cling to moments as if they can be held, and when they pass, we call ourselves broken. But the bamboo basket is not broken because it cannot hold water. It is perfect for what it is, a vessel that is cleansed by the very act of releasing." This teaching is echoed in the Dhammapada, where the Buddha says, "Like a water bubble, like a flash of lightning, so are formed, and so dissolve the compounds of being." Dhammapada 146. The compounds of being, our feelings, thoughts, experiences, are meant to form and dissolve, just as water forms in the basket and then dissolves away. From a modern psychological perspective, Kenji's frustration arises from what we call attachment theory. Our brains are wired to seek stability and permanence, a relic of our evolutionary past where consistency meant survival. When we encounter impermanence, when joy fades, when relationships change our amygdala, the brain's threat detector activates, triggering feelings of loss or anxiety. We interpret this as a problem with ourselves. There must be something wrong with me because I can't hold on to happiness, rather than recognizing it as a natural response to the impermanent nature of life. Neuroscientists have discovered that the default mode network, the part of our brain active when we're not focused on the external world, tends to ruminate on past regrets and future worries, often fixating on what we lack. This network is highly active in people who experience feelings of emptiness, as if the brain is searching for something to fill the space. But what if that space is not something to be filled, but a natural, even necessary part of our being? Think of your mind as a vast sky. Thoughts and feelings are like clouds. They form, drift, and dissolve. The sky itself is never changed by the clouds. It simply holds them without attachment. When we try to grasp onto certain clouds, joy, pleasure, and push away others, sadness, emptiness, we're trying to control the weather, which is impossible. The bamboo basket teaches us to be like the sky open, allowing without the need to hold or contain. Now, let us pause for a moment to breathe. Take a deep breath in through your nose feeling your lungs expand, your belly rise. Hold it for a count of 3. Then exhale slowly through your mouth, releasing any tension in your shoulders, your jaw, your forehead. As you breathe, imagine your mind as the bamboo basket open, with space between the weaves. With each inhale, imagine life flowing in, and with each exhale, allow it to flow out without clinging. This is the rhythm of existence. Receiving and releasing, holding and letting go. Kenji returns to the stream the next morning, but this time with a different attitude. He dips the basket into the water, watches it fill and empty, and walks back to the monastery, noticing how the sunlight catches the droplets still clinging to the bamboo. When he arrives, Hiroshi is waiting. "Did you bring water?" The master asks. "No, master," Kenji replies, "but I brought back a clean basket." Hiroshi nods. "And how does your heart feel?" Kenji pauses, surprised to realize that the tightness in his chest has loosened. "Lighter," he says, "as if I've been carrying a heavy stone that I didn't need to hold." "This is the wisdom of emptiness, Kenji," Hiroshi says. "It is not a void to be filled, but a space to be lived in open, receptive, unburdened by the need to hold on to what cannot be held. Your heart is not broken because it releases joy. It is perfect because it allows joy to flow through it, just as the basket allows water to flow through, cleaning and refreshing as it goes." The Buddha expressed this same wisdom when he taught the concept of sunyata, Sanskrit for emptiness, not as a negative absence, but as the fundamental nature of reality. All things are interconnected, interdependent, and without fixed, permanent existence. This is not a cause for despair, but for freedom. When we stop clinging to the illusion of permanence, we are free to experience life as it is, in each precious moment. For many of us, the feeling of emptiness arises when we mistake the natural flow of experience for a personal failing. We think, if I were better, stronger, more worthy, I could hold on to happiness. But the bamboo basket doesn't need to be fixed. Its nature is to release, and in releasing, it becomes clean. So too with our hearts. Their nature is to let experience flow through, and in that flowing, we find renewal. Now, let us practice. Together, take another deep breath in, and as you exhale, imagine your heart as the bamboo basket. Feel any tightness, any desire to cling, soften. With each inhale, imagine life flowing in sounds, sensations, feelings, and with each exhale, allow them to flow out without judgment. You don't need to hold on to anything. Your heart is doing exactly what it's meant to do. Receive and release. This is the practical wisdom of the bamboo basket. Emptiness is not a flaw, but a function. It is the space that allows life to move through us, cleaning, healing, and transforming us in ways we cannot anticipate when we're focused on holding on. As Kenji continues his daily task of carrying water with the bamboo basket, something shifts in him. He stops seeing it as a chore or a test and begins to find beauty in the process. The way sunlight refracts through the falling water, the sound of it rushing through the gaps, the feeling of cool droplets on his hands. He notices that while the basket never holds water for long, his hands, his feet, the path he walks are all refreshed by the water that spills. One morning, as he dips the basket into the stream, he realizes the emptiness of the basket is what allows it to interact with the world. A solid container would hold the water, separate from it, but the basket, in its emptiness, becomes part of the flow connected to the stream, the earth, the air as the water falls. This is the deeper truth of sunyata. Emptiness is connection. When we let go of our need to hold, to control, to be filled, we become part of the vast, interconnected web of life. We stop feeling isolated and separate, and begin to sense our belonging to something greater. The Buddha taught, just as a candle cannot burn without fire, men cannot live without a spiritual life. Dhammapada 244. This spiritual life is not about filling ourselves with dogma or doctrine, but about recognizing our true nature as open, empty, and connected like the bamboo basket, perfectly designed to receive and release, to be part of the flow. From a psychological perspective, this shift in perception from seeing emptiness as a lack to seeing it as a space for connection activates different neural pathways in the brain. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for empathy and perspective taking, becomes more active, while the amygdala's threat response calms. We move from a state of scarcity, I need to fill this emptiness, to a state of abundance. This emptiness allows me to receive life. Now, let's take a moment to breathe again, deeper this time. Inhale for a count of 4. Hold for 2. Exhale for 6. As you breathe, imagine your mind as a vast, open space, like the sky, like the ocean, like the bamboo basket. There's room for everything here. Joy and sadness, fear and courage, emptiness and fullness. Nothing needs to be fixed or changed. Everything is allowed to flow through. This is the freedom of the bamboo basket. It doesn't resist its nature, doesn't struggle against its holes. It simply is, and in being, it serves a purpose beyond containing. Tonight, as you rest, I invite you to practice this wisdom. Before closing your eyes, take 3 deep breaths, and with each exhale, imagine your heart as the bamboo basket open, empty, and perfect as it is. Then, as you drift toward sleep, notice the thoughts and feelings that arise, but instead of trying to hold on to them or push them away, let them flow through, like water through the basket's weaves. You might even visualize the bamboo basket beside your bed, gently swinging, its strips glistening from the water that has passed through. Remember, the basket is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was meant to do. And so are you. As Kenji learns, the emptiness he feared was never an enemy, but a teacher. It taught him to let go of his attachment to permanence, to find beauty in the flow of life, and to recognize that his true nature is not a fixed, solid thing, but a dynamic, open space capable of receiving, releasing, and being renewed with each passing moment. In the same way, the emptiness you feel is not a flaw, but a gateway. It invites you to let go what isn't serving you, to make space for what is, and to remember that you are part of something vast and beautiful, a river of life that flows through you, just as it flowed through the bamboo basket, cleaning, refreshing, and making you new. Peace comes not from filling the emptiness, but from befriending it, from recognizing that it is the very thing that allows you to experience life fully, without the burden of holding on. Take one more breath now, deep and full, and carry this truth with you as we move forward. Your heart is like the bamboo basket, perfect in its openness, wise in its ability to release, and beautifully connected to the flow of all life. Peace comes from within. Repeat that with me silently. Peace comes from within. And again, peace comes from within. This truth, as ancient as the bamboo forests and as fresh as the morning stream, is yours to carry. Now, let us move forward. Our hearts a little lighter, our minds a little more open, as we journey to the next story, where a samurai will discover that sometimes what we think is absence is actually clarity. But before we go, let the sound of the stream and the rustle of bamboo stay with you. A gentle reminder of the wisdom of release. Breathe in and breathe out, and let go. Let the sound of the mountain stream fade gently behind you, like a lullaby growing softer as sleep approaches. Feel the cool mist of water on your skin give way to the warmth of sunlight filtering through wooden beams as we move now from the Yaskin bamboo grove to the interior of a quiet dojo, a training hall where tatami mats cover the floor like a field of golden grass, and the air smells of sandalwood and sweat, of discipline and devotion. Here, in this space of focused intention, lives a samurai named Takeshi. His armor hangs on a stand in the corner, its steel plates polished to a mirror shine. Each scratch and dent a story of battles fought and lessons learned. But today, Takeshi is not training with his sword. He stands before a small round mirror, placed on a low wooden table, and his face, usually set in the calm resolve of a warrior, is twisted with confusion and fear. "What is happening to me?" he whispers, his voice barely audible above the flicker of the candle beside the mirror. He leans closer, his eyes wide, searching. "Why can't I see myself?" The mirror reflects the tatami mats, the candle flame, the wooden beams above, but where Takeshi's reflection should be, there is only emptiness, as if his body has become as transparent as air. He touches his face, feels the solidity of his jaw, the warmth of his skin, and yet the mirror shows nothing. It is as if he has ceased to exist in the world of form, as if his very being has dissolved into the void. He has spent his life fearing that Takeshi has always been defined by his presence by the strength of his arm, the sharpness of his mind, the honor of his name. To be a samurai is to be seen, respected, feared, acknowledged. But now, in the glass, he is absent, and that absence gnaws at him like a wolf at the door of a lonely cabin. Am I losing my mind? He wonders. Is this a curse? A punishment for some unseen failure? He paces the dojo, his footsteps silent on the tatami, his mind racing through memories of battles won and lost, of oaths sworn and kept. He thinks of his father, whose reflection in the same mirror was always clear and strong, a pillar of certainty. A samurai without a reflection is a samurai without a soul, his father used to say. And now, Takeshi fears this has come true. Morning. Light seeps through the shoshi screens, turning the air into a mosaic of gold and shadow. Takeshi kneels before the mirror again, as if begging for his reflection to return. But the glass remains stubbornly empty, and with each passing moment, his fear grows heavier, like a suit of armor made of lead. Finally, he stands, his decision made. He will seek out the Zen master who lives in the temple at the top of the mountain. Man known for seeing beyond the surface of things, for finding light in the darkest corners of doubt. If anyone can explain this absence, this terrifying emptiness, it is he. The path to the temple winds upward through a forest of cedar trees, their trunks straight as spears reaching toward the sky. The air grows thinner as Takeshi climbs, and his breath comes in short, sharp gasps, not from physical exertion, but from the weight of his fear. He thinks of the mirror again, of that empty space where he should be, and feels a coldness in his chest, as if his heart has turned to ice. Empty, he mutters, his boots crunching on the gravel path. I feel empty, as if all that I am has been erased. The temple comes into view at last, its red gates standing like sentinels at the edge of a clearing. A stone lantern flickers beside. The entrance, and beyond it, a garden where stones are arranged with the precision of a haiku, each one saying more in its silence than words ever could. Takeshi pauses at the gate, smoothing the front of his kimono, gathering what remains of his courage. A monk in gray robes appears at the entrance, bowing deeply. The master has been expecting you, samurai, he says. His voice is calm as a still lake. Takeshi follows the monk through a courtyard where a fountain plays, its water falling into a stone basin with the sound of 1,000 tiny bells. They enter a small room where an old man sits cross-legged on a cushion, his back straight as a pine tree, his eyes as calm as the surface of a mountain lake. This is Master Ai-hei, whose hair and beard are the white of snow, but whose face holds the wisdom of someone who has seen many winters and many springs. Welcome, Takeshi, Master Ai-hei says, gesturing to a cushion across from him. I sense you carry a heavy burden. Sit and let us lighten it together. Takeshi kneels, his hands resting on his thighs, his posture perfect even in his distress. Master, I do not know how to put this into words. When I look into a mirror, I see nothing, no reflection, as if I am not here. What does this mean? Am I disappearing? Master Ai pours tea into 2 small cups, the liquid steaming gently in the cool air. He hands one to Takeshi, who takes it with a shaky hand. Drink, the master says. The tea will help your tongue find its courage. Takeshi sips the tea, its bitterness giving way to a subtle sweetness, like the aftertaste of a lesson hard learned. He feels the warmth of the cup seep into his palms, grounding him in the present moment. Tell me, Takeshi, Master Ai says, sipping his own tea, what do you see when you look at the moon reflected in water? The samurai blinks, confused by the question. I see the moon, of course. A perfect image, as clear as the real thing. But is it the moon itself? The master asks. No, it is a reflection. And what happens when the water is disturbed by a wind, by a stone dropped into its surface? The reflection breaks apart, becomes distorted, Takeshi replies. It no longer looks like the moon. But does the moon itself change? Of course not, Takeshi says. The moon remains unchanged. Only the reflection is disturbed. Master Ai nods, his eyes twinkling like stars caught in amber. And so it is with your mirror, Takeshi. The mirror is like the water when it is clear and undisturbed. It reflects what is before it. But when it is covered with dust, or when the surface is clouded, it shows nothing, even though the object remains. Takeshi frowns, not understanding. But the mirror is clean, master. I polished it myself this morning. There is no dust. The mirror I speak of is not the one on your table, samurai, Ai says softly. It is the mirror of your mind. For years, you have polished the surface of your life, your armor, your sword, your reputation, while allowing the mirror of your true self to become covered with the dust of expectation, of fear, of the need to be seen and acknowledged. He sets his teacup down, the sound like a stone striking a still pond. You think the emptiness in the mirror is a reflection of your absence, but it is actually a reflection of your mind's clutter. The dust of your attachments has become so thick that even your own image cannot penetrate it. You are so focused on being seen that you have forgotten to see, to truly recognize yourself beyond the roles you play, the armor you wear, the name you carry. Takeshi leans forward, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and recognition. But what am I, then, if not the samurai, the warrior, the son of my father? Let us look to the Buddha's teachings for insight, Master Ai says. In the Anatta Sutta, the Buddha teaches the concept of anatta non-self. He says that what we perceive as I and mine is actually a collection of constantly changing elements, like a river that is never the same from one moment to the next. The idea of a fixed, permanent self is an illusion, a story we tell ourselves to make sense of the flow of experience. He quotes the Sutta directly. Form is not self. Feeling is not self. Perception is not self. Mental formations are not self. Consciousness is not self. Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. What the mirror shows you, Takeshi, is not your absence, but the absence of that illusionary fixed self. It shows you the truth of anatta, the reality, that you are not a static image, but a flowing, changing, ever-evolving process. This is not emptiness as a void, but emptiness as freedom from the prison of a fixed identity. From a modern psychological perspective, Takeshi's fear of his missing reflection is rooted in what psychologists call ego identity, the sense of self we construct through our roles, relationships, and achievements. This identity is a necessary part of functioning in the world, but when we confuse it with our true nature, we become trapped in a prison of our own making. We fear any threat to this identity as a threat to our very existence. Neuroscience tells us that the self we perceive is actually a narrative constructed by the brain, a story woven from memories, thoughts, and sensations. This narrative is useful, but it is not who we truly are. When the mirror fails to reflect Takeshi's ego identity, his brain interprets this as a threat to his survival, triggering the amygdala's fear response and creating a sense of existential panic. But what if, instead of fearing this absence, we could learn to rest in it? What if the emptiness in the mirror is not a void, but a space where we can encounter our true nature, beyond the stories, beyond the roles, beyond the need to be seen? Take a moment now to breathe deeply, in through your nose, out through your mouth. As you exhale, imagine letting go of the stories you tell about yourself, about who you are, what you've done, what you should be. Feel the weight of these stories lift, like armor being removed after a long battle. Notice the space that opens up in their absence, not an empty void, but a live, vibrant presence. Like the sky without clouds, this is the space Takeshi is encountering in the mirror, the space of pure awareness, which is always present, but often hidden by the clutter of our thoughts and identities. Master Aihei stands and walks to a window, gazing out at the mountain beyond. "Come here, Takeshi," he says. The samurai rises and joins him, looking out at the landscape stretching below green valleys, winding rivers, distant peaks covered in snow. "Do you see the mountain?" the master asks. "Yes," Takeshi replies. "Does the mountain need to see itself in a mirror to know it exists?" "Of course not," Takeshi says, confused. "Ah," Aihei says, turning to face him. "The mountain simply is solid, present, grounded in its own being. It does not need reflection or acknowledgement to exist. It is enough unto itself, and so are you, Takeshi. Your existence is not dependent on being seen or reflected. You are enough simply by virtue of being." He places a hand gently on Takeshi's shoulder. The mirror that shows no image is not a curse. It is a gift. It is inviting you to let go of the need to be reflected, to be seen, to be defined by others' perceptions. It is inviting you to rest in the solidity of your own being, like a mountain unconcerned with how it appears, simply present in its truth. Takeshi looks back at the master, and for a moment, his eyes soften, the fear in them giving way to a flicker of understanding. "But how do I live without that reflection?" He asks. "How do I find purpose if not through my role as a samurai, my identity as a warrior?" "The purpose is in the being, not the doing," Aihei says. The Buddha taught that true freedom comes when we let go of attachment to the fruits of our actions, when we act without being defined by our actions. You can still be a samurai. Takeshi, you can still wield your sword, honor your oaths, but you can do so without clinging to the identity of samurai as who you are. You can be like the mirror itself, reflecting the world without becoming the reflection. This is the essence of mindfulness, mindfulness aware without judgment. It is the ability to be present with experience without being consumed by it, to act without being defined by action, to see without being blinded by what is seen. Takeshi returns to his dojo that evening, but something in him has shifted, like the first crack in a sheet of ice signaling the coming of spring. He stands again before the mirror, and though his reflection is still absent, the fear has softened into curiosity, like a traveler approaching a new land with wonder rather than trepidation. He touches the surface of the mirror, feels its cool smoothness, and realizes the mirror is not showing him absence. It is showing him presence, the presence of the mirror itself, which exists not to reflect, but to be a clear surface for reflection. In its emptiness, it is perfectly prepared to receive whatever appears before it, without clinging, without judgment. What if I could be like this mirror? Takeshi wonders. Clear, empty, present, ready to receive life without needing to be seen or acknowledged in return. He picks up his sword, draws it from its sheath with a sound like a sigh, and begins to practice his forms. But today, his movements are different. He is not performing for an imaginary audience, not trying to live up to an image of perfection. He is simply moving, breathing, being like the mountain, like the mirror, like the river that flows without needing to know its own name. As he practices, a strange thing happens. The sword in his hand feels lighter, as if it has become an extension of his arm rather than a separate object. His movements flow into one another without effort, like water finding its natural course. And when he finally sheathes his sword, he feels a sense of peace he has never known, not the peace of victory, but the peace of simply being, of belonging to himself without condition. From a psychological perspective, Takashi is experiencing what is known as flow state, a state of complete absorption in the present moment, where the ego dissolves and action happens effortlessly. In this state, the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for rumination and self-criticism, becomes less active, allowing the prefrontal cortex to focus fully on the task at hand. This is the neural basis of the Zen concept of no mind, mashin in Japanese, a state of mind free from distractions and self-consciousness. This state is accessible to all of us, not just samurai or Zen masters. It is present in the moments when we lose ourselves in a task, when we are fully engaged in the present without worrying about the past or future. And it is closely related to the experience of emptiness, not as a void, but as a state of mind free from the clutter of ego. Take a moment now to breathe deeply in and out, and imagine what it would feel like to be in this state, clear, focused, present. Notice how your body feels, how your mind quiets when you let go of the need to be something, to achieve something, to prove something. This is your natural state, as close as your next breath. Master Aihei's words echo in Takeshi's mind. In the days that follow, the mirror's emptiness is not an absence, but a possibility. It is the space where new reflections can arise, unclouded by the past. And slowly, Takeshi begins to understand. The absence of his reflection is not a loss, but a liberation, a chance to stop defining himself by how he is seen and start living from the truth of who he is, beyond image and identity. One morning, as the sun rises over the dojo, Takeshi stands before the mirror again. He closes his eyes for a moment, takes a deep breath, and opens them. And there, in the glass, his reflection has returned not as a fixed image, but as a living, breathing presence, dynamic and changing, like fire dancing or water flowing. It is not perfect, not without flaws, but it is real, a reflection of the man he is in this moment, not the man he thinks he should be. He smiles, a small, quiet smile, and touches the mirror gently, as if greeting an old friend. "I see you," he says, and for the first time, he means it not as a samurai, not as a son, not as any role or identity, but as the essential self that exists beneath all of these, the self that is as vast and empty and full as the sky. The Buddha taught, just as a snake sheds its skin, so too must you shed your attachments. Takashi has shed the attachment to his image, his identity, his need to be seen, and in doing so, he has found a deeper sense of self that is not dependent on external validation, but rooted in the quiet certainty of its own existence. This is the gift of the empty mirror. It shows us that our true nature is not an image to be seen, but a presence to be lived. It invites us to let go of the masks we wear, the roles we play, and rest in the freedom of simply being. Tonight, as you prepare to rest, I invite you to practice this wisdom. Find a quiet place where you can sit comfortably, and if you have a mirror nearby, look into it. But instead of focusing on your appearance, your features, your flaws, your image, try to see beyond that. Look into your eyes, and see the awareness that is looking back. Notice that this awareness is not defined by your appearance. It is the space in which your appearance arises. Like a cloud in the sky dot as you look, take 3 deep breaths, and with each exhale, say silently to yourself, I am more than this image. I am the awareness that sees it. Feel the truth of this statement resonate in your bones, like the deep hum of a temple bell reverberating through the mountains. If you don't have a mirror, you can simply close your eyes and imagine looking into one. The image you see is just that, an image, a collection of light and shadow, changing with time, with light, with emotion. But the one who sees it, the awareness that is present behind your eyes, that is constant, unchanging, and free from the limitations of form. This is the emptiness of the mirror made flesh. Not a void, but a vast, open space of awareness that can hold all experiences without being defined by them. It is the space where joy and sorrow, success and failure, beauty and imperfection can all arise and pass away like clouds in the sky, without altering the essential nature of the sky itself. Take a moment to breathe into this space, to rest, in the awareness that you are more than any image, any story, any role. You are the mirror and the sky, the mountain and the river, empty, full, and infinitely present. Peace comes from within. Let this truth settle into your being as we prepare to move forward. Now, let us leave the quiet dojo behind, with its tatami mats and its mirror that shows us more in emptiness than in reflection. Let the scent of sandalwood fade, and let your senses open to a new landscape, the wide, open fields where an archer practices his craft, his bowstring singing in the wind, his heart heavy with a different kind of emptiness, the emptiness of not knowing his target. The path from the dojo to the archery field is lined with cherry trees, their blossoms falling like snowflakes in the spring air. As we walk, feel the ground beneath your feet grow softer, the air open and filled with the sound of birdsong. In this space, we will meet a man whose confusion is not about being seen, but about seeing, about finding a target in a world that sometimes feels like an endless expanse of sky with no mark to aim for. But before we arrive, take one more deep breath and carry with you the wisdom of the empty mirror, that what appears to be absence is often presence, that what feels like emptiness is often the most fertile ground for truth to take root. Breathe in and breathe out, and let us continue. The cherry blossoms settle gently on the grass as we step into the archery field, a vast expanse of green stretching toward the horizon like a sea of velvet. The air here carries the earthy scent of turned soil and the faint metallic tang of bowstrings and arrowheads. In the distance, a hawk circles, riding the thermal currents, its cry sharp and clear, a sound that seems to pierce the quiet like a thought. UNBIDEN. At the center of the field stands a man named Hiro, his bow in hand, his posture rigid as a statue. He is an archer of renown, his skills honed over decades of practice, his arrows having found their mark in countless competitions and hunts. But today, his bow remains unstrung, his quiver full, and his eyes fixed on the empty space before him, where a target should be. This is ridiculous, he mutters, his voice rough with frustration. He paces back and forth, his boots flattening the grass, his mind as restless as a caged bird. I've spent my life learning to hit targets. Now there's no target, and I don't know what to do. The target, usually a circle of straw and wood, marked with concentric rings, had been damaged in a storm the night before, its frame splintered, its surface torn. The groundskeeper had promised to replace it by morning, but when Hiro arrived, at dawn, the space remained empty, a gaping hole in the landscape that mirrored the emptiness he felt in his chest. Without a target, what am I? He wonders. A bow without a purpose, a skill without a direction. Hiro has always defined himself by his ability to aim and hit, whether it was a deer in the forest, a competitor's mark in a tournament, or the goals he set for himself in life. He believed that happiness lay in hitting the target, in achieving the aim, in filling the empty circle with the point of his arrow. But now, with no target to aim for, he feels adrift, like a ship without a compass, floating on an endless sea. The emptiness he feels is different from Takeshi's fear of non-existence. This is an emptiness of purpose, a void where meaning should be. It is the sense that without something to strive for, something to achieve, life itself lacks substance, that he lacks substance. He picks up an arrow, runs his finger along its sharp tip, feels the smooth wood beneath his palm. It is a beautiful thing, crafted with care, balanced perfectly for flight. But without a target, it is just a stick with a point, useless, meaningless, empty. Maybe I should leave, he thinks. Come back when the target is fixed. Pretend this never happened. But something keeps him there, the same restlessness that drives him to practice every morning, that pushes him to improve, to aim higher, to hit harder. He needs to understand this feeling, this emptiness that has suddenly become so visible now that the target is gone. A soft breeze blows across the field, carrying the sound of a bell from a nearby temple. Hiro looks up, squints against the sun, and sees a figure walking toward him, an old man in simple robes, his step light despite his years, his presence as calm as the surface of a deep lake. It is the same monk who tends the temple garden, the one people say spends hours sitting under a Bodhi tree, doing nothing but breathing. "Good morning, Archer," the monk says, bowing slightly as he approaches. Hiro nods in reply, too distracted to return the gesture properly. "The target is gone," he says, as if explaining his distress. "So I see," the monk says, looking out at the empty space. "It is a beautiful day for shooting, is it not? How can I shoot without a target?" Hiro asks, his voice edged with irritation. "What is the point?" The monk smiles, a gentle, knowing smile that makes Hiro feel as if he is missing something obvious. Is the point of the arrow to hit the target or to fly? He asks. Hiro blinks, confused by the question. To hit the target, of course. Otherwise, why shoot? "Ah," the monk says, sitting down cross-legged on the grass, patting the spot beside him. "Let us talk about this. You have heard of the Buddha, yes?" "Of course," Hiro says, sitting reluctantly. "Everyone has. The Buddha taught what he called the Four Noble Truths," the monk says, his voice soft, like wind through grass. "The first is that life contains dukkha suffering, dissatisfaction, a sense that something is missing. Does this sound familiar?" Hiro thinks of the emptiness he feels without a target, of the restlessness that drives him to keep shooting even when he's already won, of the way happiness fades so quickly after hitting a mark. "Yes," he says quietly. "It sounds very familiar. The second truth is that this suffering arises from tanha craving, desire, the need to hit the target, to achieve the goal, to fill the emptiness with something." The monk continues. "We think that if we can just hit this one target, reach this one goal, then we will be happy. But like you, when the target is gone, or when we hit it and it is no longer enough, we feel that emptiness again, even more strongly." This echoes the Buddha's words in the Dhammacappa Bhavavavan Sutta, the first sermon. And this, Bhikkhus, is the noble truth of the origin of suffering. It is this craving which leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking. Delight here and there. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for extermination. Hiro thinks about this, about how after every competition he wins, he immediately starts thinking about the next one, about how after buying a new bow, he soon wants a better one, about how even when his arrows hit the center of the target, the satisfaction fades like mist in the sun. The third truth, the monk says, is that this suffering can cease, that there is a way to be free from the endless cycle of craving and disappointment. And the fourth truth is the noble eightfold path, the way to achieve this freedom. He turns to Hiro, his eyes clear and bright. But what does this have to do with your arrow and your missing target? It has everything to do with it. You think your suffering comes from the absence of a target, but it actually comes from your attachment to having a target, from the belief that your happiness, your purpose, your very existence depends on hitting something outside yourself. From a modern psychological perspective, Hiro is experiencing what psychologists call extrinsic motivation. Motivation driven by external rewards or goals. While this can be effective for achieving specific outcomes, it often leaves us feeling empty when those goals are achieved, or in Hiro's case, when they disappear. Research shows that people motivated primarily by external goals are more likely to experience anxiety, depression, and a sense of meaninglessness, as their sense of self-worth is tied to things outside their control. The default mode network in Hiro's brain is working overtime, ruminating on his lack of purpose, reinforcing the belief that without a target, he is nothing. This network is highly active when we are not focused on the external world, and it tends to fixate on the past and future, on what we lack, on what we need to be happy. But the monk is inviting Hiro to activate a different network, the one associated with present moment awareness, with intrinsic motivation, with the joy of doing something for its own sake, rather than for an external reward. Try something for me, the monk says, standing up. Take your bow, knock an arrow, draw it back. Hiro hesitates. But there's no target. Exactly, the monk says. Draw it back, but instead of aiming at something outside, aim at the feeling of, drawing at the tension in your muscles, the weight of the bow in your hand, the air filling your lungs as you hold your breath. Hiro does as he's told, feeling the familiar resistance of the bowstring, the arrow balanced perfectly on his finger. He draws back slowly, his eyes closing involuntarily as he focuses on the sensations in his body, the stretch of his shoulder, the pressure of the string against his cheek, the beating of his heart. Now, the monk says softly, release. Hiro lets go, and the arrow flies straight, true, but without a target to hit. It soars across the field, a dark streak against the sky, before landing in the grass, far from any mark. And how did that feel? The monk asks. Pointless, Hiro says, but there is a hint of uncertainty in his voice. It didn't hit anything. But did it fly true? Yes, it did. Then it was not pointless, the monk says. The arrow's purpose is not just to hit, but to fly. Your purpose is not just to achieve, but to experience the act of striving, to feel the pull of the bow, the wind on your face, the life in your body as you aim and release. He picks up another arrow, hands it to Hiro. Try again, but this time, let the arrow's flight be its own reward. Let the act of shooting be enough, without needing a target to validate it. Hiro knocks the arrow, draws back, and this time, he doesn't think about hitting anything. He thinks about the way the wood warms in his hand, about the sound of the wind, about the sun on his skin. He feels the tension in the bow, not as something to be released, but as a thing of beauty in itself, the potential energy waiting to become kinetic, the stillness before movement. When he releases, he watches the arrow fly, not with anticipation of where it will land, but with wonder at the way it moves through the air, spinning gently, following its own path. It lands in the grass, but this time, Hiro doesn't feel disappointment. He feels something else, a sense of lightness, a freedom from expectation. The Buddha taught that life is like a raft, the monk says, sitting down again. We build a raft to cross a river, and it serves us well. But if we try to carry the raft with us once we're on the other side, it becomes a burden. Your target is like that raft, It can help you focus, guide your practice, give direction to your skill. But if you become attached to it, if you think you cannot live without it, it becomes a burden, a source of suffering. This is the wisdom of non-attachment, not indifference, but freedom from the suffering of clinging. It is the ability to use the raft without being burdened by it, to aim at the target without needing the target to define your worth. Hiro shoots again and again, each arrow flying without a target, each release a little more effortless than the last. He begins to notice things he never paid attention to before, the way the bowstring vibrates against his skin when he releases, the different sounds arrows make as they cut through the air, the way the light changes the trajectory of each flight. Realizes that for years he has been so focused on the target that he missed the beauty of the process, the dance between bow and arrow, the connection between his body and the weapon, the life that pulses through both. The target was a way to measure, to judge, to validate, but it was never the point. From a psychological perspective, Hiro is shifting from extrinsic to intrinsic motivation, finding reward in the activity itself rather than in external outcomes. This shift is associated with greater satisfaction, creativity, and resilience. When we are intrinsically motivated, we are less likely to feel empty or meaningless when external goals disappear, because our sense of purpose comes from within. Monk watches silently, a smile playing on his lips as Hiro continues to shoot. He sees the tension in the archer's shoulders ease, the furrow between his brows smooth, the focus in his eyes shift from something outside to something inside. As the sun rises higher in the sky, the groundskeeper finally arrives, carrying a new target. He sets it up quickly, hammering the stakes into the ground, adjusting the straw until it is taut and true. When he is finished, he turns to Hiro and nods, as if expecting a thank you, a sign of relief. But Hiro doesn't immediately reach for another arrow. He stands looking at the target, at the concentric circles that have defined his life for so long, and something has changed. The target is still there, still a thing to aim for, but it is no longer the only thing. It is a choice, not a necessity. He knocks an arrow, draws back, and this time he aims, but not with the same intensity, not with the same need to hit. He aims with a sense of play, of curiosity, of freedom. The arrow flies, hits the outer ring, and Hiro smiles, not because he missed, not because he hit, but because the arrow flew true, because he felt the joy of releasing it, because in that moment he was fully alive. The arrow that hits the target is not better than the arrow that flies wide, the monk says, as if reading Hiro's thoughts. They both do what arrows do, they fly. The difference is in the archer's mind, in whether he sees the arrow as a failure or as a perfect expression of its nature. This is the essence of the Buddha's teaching on non-judgment, seeing things as they are, without labeling them as good or bad, success or failure. It is the ability to appreciate the arrow that hits and the arrow that misses equally, because both are simply doing what arrows do. Hiro packs up his bow and arrows as the sun begins to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The field is dotted with arrows, some close to where the target stands, some far away, each one a marker of a moment when he was fully present, fully alive, without need or expectation. As he walks off the field, he pauses beside the monk, who is still sitting under a tree, watching the sunset. "Thank you," Hiro says, his voice sincere. "I think I understand now." "Understand what?" the monk asks. "That the target is not the point," Hiro says. "That the emptiness I felt wasn't because the target was gone, but because I thought I needed it to be whole. That the arrow's flight is its own reward." The monk nods. "And what will you do when the target is there tomorrow?" "I will shoot," Hiro says. "But I will also remember to see the arrow, the bow, my own hand holding it. I will remember that the joy is in the doing, not the hitting. The Buddha expressed this same wisdom when he said, "Work out your own salvation. Do not depend on others." Dhammapada 276. Our salvation, our freedom from suffering, our sense of purpose, our peace of mind does not depend on external targets or goals. It comes from within, from how we engage with the process of living, from our ability to find meaning in the doing rather than the achieving. Take a moment now to breathe deeply, in and out, and think about the targets in your own life, the goals, the achievements, the things you think will make you happy. Notice how attached you are to hitting them, how you define your worth by whether you succeed or fail. Then imagine what it would feel like to let go of that attachment, to still aim, to still strive, but to find joy in the aiming and striving themselves, regardless of the outcome. This is the freedom of the unfired arrow, not the arrow that never flies, but the arrow that flies without needing to hit. It is the freedom to be fully present in the act of living, to find purpose in the process rather than the product, to embrace the emptiness of not knowing and still have the courage to release the BOWSTRING as we leave. Hero on the archery field, his heart lighter than it has been in years. Let us carry with us this wisdom, that our targets are not our purpose, that our goals are not our worth, that the emptiness we fear is often just the space where freedom can take flight. Peace comes from within. Say this silently to yourself, letting it sink in your bones. Peace comes from within. Now, let us move from the open field to a small tea house, where a scholar sits with a cup in his hand, his mind as full as Hero's was empty, his heart heavy with the weight of knowledge. The path to the tea house winds through a forest of pine trees, their needles rustling secrets in the wind, their scent sharp and clean. As we walk, feel the ground beneath your feet grow harder, the air cooler, as if we are stepping into a space of quiet reflection, where the emptiness of not knowing meets the fullness of too much knowing. But before we arrive, take one more deep breath and let go of any targets you may be carrying, any expectations, any goals, any need to hit the mark. Just breathe, just be. Just let your arrow fly wherever it may land. Breathe in and breathe out. And let us continue. The pine needles crunch softly beneath your feet as we follow the path to the tea house, their fragrance mingling with the scent of burning incense carried on the breeze. The forest grows denser here, the trees standing like silent sentinels, their branches weaving a canopy that filters the sunlight into dappled patterns on the ground. Somewhere nearby, a stream gurgles, its water running over smooth stones in a melody as old as time. The tea house emerges suddenly from the trees, a small structure of dark wood and paper screens, its roof tiled with terracotta that glows red. In the afternoon light, a wooden sign hangs above the door, carved with a single character, Cha Tea. Smoke curls from a small chimney, carrying the rich aroma of jasmine and roasted beans. Inside, the air is cool and still, as if time moves more slowly here. Tatami mats cover the floor, their edges worn smooth by years of footsteps. Low tables are set at intervals, each with a small kettle, a clay teapot, and a single cup, empty, waiting. Sunlight filters through the paper screens, casting soft rectangles of light that shift slowly as the sun moves across the sky. At one of the tables sits a man named Akira, his posture straight but tense, as if he's carrying a heavy load even while sitting. He is a scholar, known throughout the region for his knowledge of philosophy, literature, and the ancient texts. His shelves at home are filled with scrolls and books, his mind filled with quotes and arguments, his conversations filled with references to the great thinkers of the past. But today, Akira is not here to debate or discuss. He is here because of a persistent feeling, a sense that no amount of knowledge can ease, a weariness of the mind, a spiritual exhaustion that makes even the weight of his own thoughts feel burdensome. He has read every text on happiness, every treatise on peace of mind, every analysis of the human condition, and yet he feels emptier than ever, as if his vast knowledge has created a vacuum in his soul. The tea master, an elderly woman with hands weathered by years of pouring water and rolling tea leaves, enters silently, her movements as graceful as a dance. She wears a simple indigo robe, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, a single wooden hairpin holding it in place. Her eyes are warm and wise, as if she has seen many scholars like Akira pass through her tea house, their minds full to bursting, their hearts empty. "Welcome," she says, her voice like the rustle of dry leaves. "What brings you here today?" Akira adjusts his sleeves, a nervous habit he has when he feels out of control. "I seek understanding," he says, his voice tight. "I have studied all the great works, memorized the teachings of the wise, and yet I feel empty, as if all this knowledge has filled my mind, but left no room for anything else, no room for peace, for joy, for meaning." The tea master nods, as if she has heard this exact complaint 100 times before. She moves to the table, sets down a small clay pot, and begins to heat water in a cast iron kettle over a low flame. The water bubbles softly, a sound that seems to fill the silence with presence. "Tell me," she says, not looking up from her task, "what do you know of tea?" Akira relaxes slightly, relieved to be on familiar ground. "I know that tea originated in China during the Shang dynasty and was brought to Japan in the 9th century by Buddhist monks. I know that there are many varieties: matcha, sencha, gyokuro, each with its own preparation method. I know that the tea ceremony, Chenoyu, is a highly ritualized practice that embodies the principles of harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility." He pauses, expecting a reaction, but the tea master continues to work, measuring tea leaves into the pot with precise, deliberate movements. "Very good," she says finally. "You know much about tea. Now let me serve you." She pours hot water into the pot, swirls it gently, then pours it out into a small bowl, warming the clay. She adds more leaves, pours in water at just the right temperature, not too hot, not too cool, and lets it steep for a moment, the steam rising in thin wisps, carrying the scent of fresh grass and spring flowers. Then, without warning, she picks up Akira's cup, which he hadn't even noticed she had placed before him, and fills it to the brim with tea. Akira watches, confused, as the tea overflows, spilling onto the table, onto the tatami mats, onto his hands. "Stop," he says, startled. "The cup is full. It can't hold any more tea. You're wasting it." The tea master stops pouring, sets down the pot, and looks Akira directly in the eyes. "Ah," she says, "so you see, your mind is like this cup, already full to the brim with your knowledge, your opinions, your assumptions. How can I pour anything new into it? How can you receive any new understanding when there is no space for it?" Akira stares at the overflowing cup, the hot tea seeping into the mat beneath it, and feels a sudden clarity, like a fog lifting from his mind. He has spent so much time filling himself with knowledge that he has forgotten how to receive, how to listen without planning his response, how to learn without comparing new information to old, how to be present without analyzing. This is the teaching of Shoshin, the beginner's mind. It is the ability to approach each moment as if it were the first time, without preconceptions or assumptions, without the weight of past knowledge interfering with present experience. The term comes from Zen Buddhism, where it is considered essential for spiritual growth. The idea that a mind open to new possibilities is far more receptive to truth than a mind closed by certainty. The Buddha taught this same principle in the Majjhima Nikaya, where he said, "Just as in a great ocean there is but one taste, the taste of salt, so in the Dharma and discipline expounded by the Tathagata, there is but one taste, the taste of liberation. This taste of liberation cannot be experienced if our minds are already full of other tastes, other ideas, other expectations." From a modern psychological perspective, Akira is experiencing the cognitive overload that comes from what psychologists call mental clutter, the accumulation of knowledge, opinions, and assumptions that prevents us from being present in the moment. This clutter activates the default mode network, keeping us trapped in a cycle of rumination and overthinking, and prevents us from accessing the present moment awareness that is essential for well-being. Neuroscientists have discovered that the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, social behavior, and abstract thinking, can become overworked when we're constantly accessing stored knowledge and information. This leads to mental fatigue, emotional numbness, and the sense of emptiness that Akira feels, a state where the mind is so busy processing the past that it can't engage with the present. The tea master takes a clean cloth and wipes up the spilled tea, her movements slow and deliberate, as if each action is a meditation. She refills the kettle, then takes a new cup, small, simple, made of unglazed clay, and places it before Akira. "This cup is empty," she says. "Like the mind of a beginner, it has no expectations, no assumptions, no need to prove anything. It is simply ready to receive." She pours the tea again, this time filling the cup only 3/4 full, leaving space at the top. The tea sits in the cup, a deep green liquid that shimmers in the light. "Drink," she says. Akira picks up the cup, feels its warmth in his hands, breathes in the aroma, not as a scholar analyzing notes and undertones, but as a human being experiencing a sensation. He takes a small sip, and for the first time in years, he doesn't immediately categorize the taste, compare it to other teas he has drunk, or think about its chemical composition. He simply tastes it, a slight bitterness giving way to sweetness, the warmth spreading through his body, the moment existing in and of itself, without context or commentary. "This is different," he says, surprised by the simplicity of the experience. I feel present," the tea master smiles. "Presence is not something you learn," she says. "It is something you unlearn. You unlearn the habit of living in your head, in the past or future, and remember to live in your body, in the now." She refills his cup, and this time, Akira notices the way her hand moves, the slight tilt of the wrist, the precision of the pour, the awareness in her eyes as she watches the tea fill the cup. He notices the sound the tea makes as it hits the clay, the way the light catches the surface of the liquid, the scent that rises like a prayer. "I have spent my life collecting knowledge as if it were treasure," Akira says, his voice soft with wonder. "But I have never really seen anything. Not a tea leaf, not a sunset, not even my own thoughts. I have only categorized and analyzed, compared and contrasted, as if life were a problem to be solved rather than a mystery to be experienced." The tea master nods. "Knowledge is like a map, useful for finding your way. But if you mistake the map for the territory, if you spend all your time studying the map instead of walking the land, you will never truly know where you are." This is the danger of what psychologists call overthinking, a common response to feelings of emptiness, where we believe that if we can just think hard enough, analyze deeply enough, understand completely enough, we will fill the void. But overthinking actually creates more emptiness, as it pulls us further away from the present moment, from the sensory experiences that give life texture and meaning, from the simple act of being. The Buddha warned against this in the Digha Nikaya, where he described the house builder, the tendency to construct elaborate, mental structures that keep us trapped in suffering. A fool, subject to birth, seeks delight in birth. The wise man, knowing the end of birth, seeks no delight in birth, he said. The house builder of our minds is constantly adding rooms of knowledge, wings of analysis, basements of worry, until we can no longer find our way out into the sunlight of present experience. Akira finishes his tea, and the tea master refills his cup without being asked. He drinks more slowly this time, savoring each sip, letting the experience unfold without hurry or expectation. He realizes that his feeling of emptiness is not because he lacks knowledge, but because he has confused knowledge with wisdom. A common mistake, but a costly one. Knowledge is knowing about something. Wisdom is experiencing it. Knowledge is filling the mind. Wisdom is emptying it enough to receive life as it is. Tell me, Akira says, setting down his cup, how do I empty my mind? How do I cultivate this beginner's mind when I have spent so long filling it? The tea master stands, moves to a window, and points to a bamboo grove outside. Watch the bamboo, she says. It grows tall, but it remains hollow. Its strength comes not from being filled, but from being empty, empty enough to bend in the wind without breaking, empty enough to grow, toward the light without being weighed down. She turns back to Akira. The mind is like bamboo. Its strength, its flexibility, its capacity to grow, all come from its emptiness, from its ability to let go of what it no longer needs, to make space for what is new. You do not need to empty your mind by force, any more than you need to hollow out bamboo by force. You simply need to stop filling it, to notice when you are clinging to knowledge out of fear, to recognize that the need to know everything is just another form of attachment. This is the psychological principle of cognitive diffusion, the ability to see thoughts as thoughts, not as reality, and to let them come and go without getting caught up in them. Research shows that cognitive diffusion reduces the power of negative thoughts and beliefs, allowing us to engage more fully with the present moment. It is the psychological equivalent of the beginner's mind, creating space between ourselves and our thoughts, so that we are not consumed by them. The tea master pours more hot water into Akira's cup, diluting the tea, lightening its color. Even knowledge, when too strong, can be bitter, she says. A little water, a little emptiness makes it palatable. Akira thinks of all the times he has refused to admit he didn't know something, all the times he has argued to defend an opinion he no longer even believed, all the times he has used knowledge as a shield to protect himself from the vulnerability of not knowing. He realizes that his vast knowledge has been a defense mechanism, a way to avoid the discomfort of uncertainty, the fear of being inadequate, the emptiness that comes from facing the mystery of existence without a ready explanation. From a psychological perspective, this is a common form of ego defense, using intellectualization to distance ourselves from uncomfortable emotions. By focusing on facts and figures, on analysis and categorization, we create a buffer between ourselves and the messy, unpredictable, emotionally charged reality of life. But while this buffer may protect us from discomfort in the short term, it also isolates us from the fullness of experience, leaving us feeling empty and disconnected. The tea master sees the recognition in Akira's eyes, the softening of his features as understanding takes root. She pours herself a cup of tea, sits across from him, and raises it in a silent toast. To emptiness, she says. To emptiness, Akira echoes, and when their cups touch, it makes a sound like a bell, clear, resonant, full of meaning. As the afternoon turns to evening, Akira sits in the tea house, drinking tea, watching the light change, listening to the sounds of the forest. He does not try to analyze, to categorize, to understand. He simply is present, open, empty in the best sense of the word. He realizes that the emptiness he feared was not a void to be filled with knowledge, but a space to be lived in. A space where life can unfold, where joy can enter, where meaning can emerge not from what he knows, but from what he experiences. Before he leaves, the tea master gives him a small clay cup, similar to the one he drank from. "Take this," she says, as a reminder. When your mind feels full to bursting, when knowledge becomes a burden rather than a blessing, remember the empty cup and make space for something new. Akira walks back through the forest as the sun sets, the cup warm in his hand, his mind quieter than it has been in years. He feels the pine needles beneath his feet, hears the stream gurgling in the distance, smells the earth as it cools after the day's heat, not as a scholar noting details, but as a human being alive to the world. He thinks of the Buddha's words. In the Sutta Nipata, just as a lotus flower grows out of the mud and yet is not stained by the mud, so too can a wise person live in the world and yet not be stained by the world. He realizes that the beginner's mind is not about being naive or ignorant, but about being in the world without being consumed by it, about having knowledge without being imprisoned by it, about seeing clearly without being blinded by what we think we know. Take a moment now to hold your hands as if you're holding an empty cup. Feel the space in your palms, the openness, the potential. Now imagine your mind as that cup, empty, ready to receive, free from the weight of what you already know. Breathe into that emptiness. Let it expand. Feel the lightness that comes from not having to know everything, not having to be right, not having to fill the space with your own thoughts. This is the gift of the empty cup. It teaches us that emptiness is not a lack, but a capacity to receive, to learn, to grow, to be surprised by life. It reminds us that sometimes the most wisdom comes not from what we fill ourselves with, but from what we allow to flow through us. Peace comes from within. Let this truth settle into the empty spaces of your mind, like tea filling a cup. Peace comes from within. Now, let us leave the tea house behind, with its empty cups and its lessons in receiving. Let the scent of jasmine tea fade, and let your senses open to a new landscape. A mountain stream, its water rushing over smooth stones, its path determined not by force, but by flow. Along its banks stands a merchant, his brow furrowed with frustration, his mind set on a single path, unable to see the possibilities that lie just beyond his rigid expectations. As we walk toward the stream, feel the ground beneath your feet grow softer, the air moister, filled with the scent of water and moss. In this space, we will learn that sometimes the greatest strength is not in pushing forward, but in yielding, not in filling every space, but in flowing around what blocks our path. But before we arrive, take one more deep breath into the emptiness of your own beginner's mind and let go of what you think you know. Just breathe, just be, just receive the moment as it is. Breathe in and breathe out, and let us continue. The scent of pine gives way to the sharp, clean aroma of water as we draw near the mountain stream. The forest thins, the trees retreating to make space for sunlight that glints off the water's surface like scattered diamonds. The sound grows. Louder first a murmur, then a rush, then the full joyous song of water in motion. Over stones, around bends, onward without pause. The stream is not wide, but it is deep in places, its current strong and purposeful. Its bed is lined with stones of all sizes, smooth pebbles, polished by years of water, larger boulders that stand like sentinels, their surfaces carved by the relentless flow into curves and hollows that tell the story of patience and persistence. The bank, his boots sinking into the soft mud, stands a man named Taro. He is a merchant, his fine silk robes slightly disheveled, his face flushed with frustration, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Behind him, a pack of goods, silks, spices, pottery lies abandoned on the ground, As if he has suddenly lost the will to carry it further, Taro has traveled for weeks, leading a small caravan of goods from his village to the market town on the other side of the mountains. The journey has been difficult, rough roads, bad weather, restless animals, but he has pressed on, driven by the promise of profit, by the pride of delivering his goods on time, by the rigid schedule he has set for himself. But now he is stuck. A recent storm has swollen the stream, making it too deep and fast to cross safely. The stones that usually serve as stepping stones are submerged, their tops barely visible as dark shapes beneath the rushing water. To go forward is dangerous. To turn back is to admit failure, to lose money, to face the disappointment of his family and business partners. "This is impossible," Taro mutters, kicking at a small stone that skitters into the water and is immediately carried away by the current. Everything was going according to plan. Why does this have to happen? He paces along the bank, his eyes fixed on the water as if he can will it to recede, as if his frustration alone can part the stream and clear his path. He thinks of the market, where vendors are already setting up their stalls, where customers are waiting, where his competitors are no doubt celebrating his delay. He thinks of the empty space in his ledger where his profits should be, of the promises he made, of the reputation he has worked so hard to build. The emptiness he feels now is not the quiet emptiness of the beginner's mind, but a turbulent emptiness, void created by the sudden collapse of his plans, by the realization that his carefully constructed path has led him to a dead end. It is the emptiness of uncertainty, of not knowing what comes next, of feeling powerless in the face of forces beyond his control. A young boy appears on the opposite bank, his bare feet splashing in the shallows, a basket of herbs slung over his shoulder. He watches Taro for a moment, then calls out, his voice clear and unself-conscious. "You want to cross, mister?" Taro looks up, surprised by the boy's boldness. "Of course I want to cross," he says, his irritation spilling into his words. "But the water is too high. Can't you see that?" The boy grins, showing a missing tooth. "The water is always high after the rains. You just can't cross the same way." "What's that supposed to mean?" Taro asks, but the boy has already turned and is wading into the stream, moving with the ease of someone who knows its secrets. Taro watches, amazed, as the boy doesn't try to fight the current, but lets his body angle slightly downstream, his feet finding hidden stones that Taro can't see, his movements fluid and adaptive. When he reaches the middle of the stream, the current catches him, pulling him sideways, but instead of struggling, he laughs, letting himself be carried a short distance before planting his feet again and continuing toward Taro's side. He emerges on the bank, shaking water from his hair, his herbs still safely in his basket. "You see," he says, "you don't fight it, you go with it." Taro stares at him, his frustration momentarily forgotten. "But that's not the way. You're supposed to go straight, directly toward your goal." The boy tilts his head, as if considering this. "Sometimes the stream knows better than you which way to go. It's been here a long time. It knows all the stones, all the deep spots, all the safe paths." He points to the water. "Look at how it moves around that big stone in the middle. It doesn't stop. It doesn't complain. It just goes around and then keeps going forward. Maybe you need to go around too, mister." Taro follows the boy's finger to a large boulder standing in the middle of the stream, its surface worn smooth by centuries of water. The current splits around it, creating two smaller streams that rejoin on the other side, stronger and more unified than before. The stone does not block the water. It shapes it, redirects it, but cannot stop it. "This is ridiculous," Taro says, but his voice lacks conviction. "I can't just go around. There are mountains on either side. The path is clear straight across. That's the only way." The boy sits down on the bank, cross-legged, and begins sorting through his herbs, his fingers nimble and precise. My grandfather says that the wise person is like water, he says, as if sharing a secret. Water is soft, but it can wear away stone. Water is flexible, but it can move mountains. Water doesn't have a fixed shape. It takes the shape of whatever contains it, but it always finds a way to flow. This echoes the teachings of Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching, but it is also deeply aligned with Buddhist wisdom. The Buddha often used water as a metaphor for the mind, teaching that a mind like water clear, flexible, adaptable is free from suffering, while a mind that is rigid and fixed is trapped in its own resistance. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha says, just as water moistens a clod of earth and makes it pliable, so too does the Dhamma moisten the mind and make it pliable. A pliable mind, like the water that flows around the stone, is able to adapt, to yield, to find new paths when old ones are blocked. From a modern psychological perspective, Taro is experiencing the stress of cognitive dissonance, the discomfort that arises when our beliefs or expectations conflict with reality. He believes that success comes from following a fixed path, from pushing forward despite obstacles, from controlling outcomes, and yet reality is showing him that this approach is not working. This dissonance activates his stress response, increasing levels of cortisol in his body and narrowing his focus to a fight or flight response. Either cross the stream directly or give up entirely. What the boy is offering is a different approach, one based on cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt our thinking to new situations, to consider multiple perspectives, to find creative solutions when old ones fail. Research shows that cognitive flexibility is associated with lower stress levels, better mental health, and greater resilience in the face of challenges. It is the psychological equivalent of water's ability to flow around obstacles. The boy stands. Pup slings his basket over his shoulder. There's a bridge upstream, he says casually. About an hour's walk. The storm didn't damage it. My grandmother uses it to get to the market when the stream is high. Taro stares at him, stunned. Why didn't you say that earlier? The boy shrugs. You didn't ask. You were too busy looking at the water and being angry. He starts to walk away, then turns back. My grandfather also says that sometimes the obstacle is not the problem. The problem is that we're looking at the obstacle instead of looking for a way around it. With that, he disappears into the trees, leaving Taro alone with the stream, his thoughts, and a new possibility that he had been too focused on his original plan to see. Taro looks at the stream again, but now he sees it differently. He notices how the water doesn't waste energy fighting the stones, but uses their presence to create new patterns, new currents, new paths. He notices how the most powerful part of the current is not where it crashes against obstacles, but where it flows freely around them. He notices that the water's strength comes not from rigidity, but from adaptability. He thinks of his business, of how he has always followed the same patterns, the same routes, the same strategies, even when they no longer worked. He thinks of how he has clung to the idea of success as a fixed destination, rather than seeing it as a journey that might require detours and adjustments. He thinks of how his rigidity has sometimes created more problems than it solved, strained relationships with suppliers, missed opportunities to innovate, stress and burnout from trying to control everything. The emptiness he felt earlier, the void created by the collapse of his plans, now feels different. It no longer feels like a threat, but like a space for new possibilities, like the empty space around the stone that allows the water to flow through. It is the emptiness of not knowing, but that not knowing is now filled with curiosity rather than fear. Taro picks up his pack, slings it over his shoulder, and begins walking upstream, following the path the boy must have taken. The walk is peaceful. the sound of the stream a constant companion, the forest around him alive with the chatter of birds and the rustle of small animals. He finds himself noticing things he would have ignored before, the way sunlight filters through the leaves, the variety of mosses growing on tree trunks, the different sounds the stream makes as it encounters different obstacles. He is practicing what psychologists call mindful attention, focusing on the present moment without judgment, noticing details that would otherwise pass unnoticed. This practice activates the prefrontal cortex, reducing activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat detector, and lowering stress levels. It is helping Taro move from a state of reactive frustration to a state of responsive curiosity. After about an hour, he comes to the bridge, a simple structure of wooden planks and rope, strong enough to hold his weight and his goods. It spans the stream at a narrow point where the water flows calmly between steep banks, its surface smooth as glass. Taro crosses slowly, feeling the slight sway of the bridge beneath his feet, looking down at the water below, which now seems gentle and accommodating, not the enemy he had perceived it as earlier. On the other side, he stops, turns, and looks back at the stream. He can see the spot where he had been standing, a small figure beside a much larger obstacle. From this distance, the stone that had blocked his path seemed small, insignificant, part of a larger landscape that includes not just obstacles, but bridges, detours, and alternative routes. This is the wisdom of water, Taro thinks. It does not deny the existence of stones. It does not pretend obstacles aren't there, but it also does not allow those obstacles to define its path. It adapts, it yields, it flows, and in doing so, it reaches its destination, even if that destination is not exactly where it thought it would be. This is the essence of the Buddha's teaching on anicca impermanence. All things change, all paths shift, all plans are subject to the unpredictable nature of reality. Suffering arises not from the fact that things change, but from our resistance to that change, from our insistence that things should be different from how they are. Buddha taught, all conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence. This striving is not the rigid, obstacle-fighting striving that Taro had been practicing, but a flexible, adaptive striving that acknowledges change and works with it, not against it. Taro continues his journey to the market, but he walks with a lighter step, his mind more open, his approach more flexible. When he arrives, he finds that some customers have indeed gone to his competitors, but he also finds new customers who appreciate his willingness to go the extra mile to deliver his goods. He learns that the bridge he crossed is used by local farmers who become new business contacts. He even discovers that the slightly longer route has given his pottery time to dry properly, reducing the risk of breakage. In the end, his profits are not what he had planned, but they are enough. More importantly, he returns home with a new understanding, a new way of being in the world that is less stressful, more adaptable, more in tune with the natural flow of life. He thinks often of the stream and the stone, of how the water's strength lies in its ability to yield, of how the empty space around obstacles is actually a path waiting to be taken. He begins to apply this wisdom to his business, to his relationships, to his approach to life's challenges. He learns to ask not, how can I force this to work? But what new path is opening up here? Not, why is this happening to me? But what can I learn from this? This shift in perspective is what psychologists call reframing, changing the way we interpret events to find new meaning or possibilities. Reframing activates different neural pathways in the brain, allowing us to move from a state of resistance to a state of acceptance, from a focus on problems to a focus on solutions. Take a moment now to think of an obstacle in your own life. Stone that is blocking your path. It might be a difficult relationship, a challenge at work, a personal limitation, or a situation beyond your control. Now, imagine yourself as water flexible, adaptable, persistent. How might you flow around this obstacle? What new paths might open up if you stop pushing against it? What possibilities are you missing because you're focused on the obstacle rather than the space around it? Breathe deeply as you consider these questions, letting your inhale fill you with the strength of water. Your exhale release any resistance, any rigidity, any need to control. Feel yourself becoming more fluid, more open, more willing to adapt. Is the gift of the stream and the stubborn stone. It teaches us that emptiness, the space around obstacles, the gaps between plans, the uncertainty of not knowing, is not a void to be feared, but a canvas waiting to be filled with new possibilities. It reminds us that our greatest strength is often not in what we push against, but in how we flow through. Peace comes from within. Let this truth flow through you like water through a stream. Peace comes from within. Now, let us leave the stream behind with its lessons in adaptability and flow. Let the sound of rushing water fade, and let your senses turn toward a small cottage nestled in a valley, with the sound of a lute being played beautifully, but with a hint of struggle drifts through the open windows. Inside, a musician sits with his instrument, his hands hovering over broken strings, his heart heavy with the fear that his music is lost forever. As we walk toward the cottage, feel the ground beneath your feet grow firmer, the air filled with the scent of wood smoke and rosemary. In this space, we will learn that sometimes the most profound music comes not from what is intact, but from what is broken, not from filling every silence, but from listening to the sound of emptiness itself. But before we arrive, take one more deep breath and let yourself flow like water around any thoughts or feelings that arise. Just breathe, just be, just let life carry you forward, as it always does. Breathe in and breathe out, and let us continue. The sound of the stream fades into a gentle murmur behind us as we walk toward the cottage, its stone walls glowing golden in the late afternoon sun. The path winds through a small garden where rosemary and lavender grow in wild profusion. There, scents mingling with the earthy aroma of wood smoke drifting from the cottage chimney. A wooden fence, weathered gray by years of sun and rain, surrounds the property, its gate hanging slightly ajar as if inviting us to enter. From inside the cottage comes the sound of a lute, not a steady melody, but fragments of music. Starts and stops, a phrase played beautifully, then abandoned, as if the musician is struggling to find his way. There is skill in the playing, a deep familiarity with the instrument, but also a tension, a hesitation that makes the music feel incomplete, like a story with its ending missing. We step through the gate and approach the open window, where we can see a man sitting on a wooden stool, his back to us, a lute balanced on his lap. His name is Kayo, a musician known throughout the valley for his skill, his ability to make the lute sing with a depth of emotion that leaves listeners breathless. But today, his shoulders are hunched, his posture defeated, and in his hands, he holds a broken string, thin, fragile, useless. The concert is tomorrow, Kaito says aloud, though there is no one else in the cottage. The governor himself will be there. And now this. He holds up the broken string, his voice cracking with frustration. 3 strings already snapped this week, now the 4th. It's as if the lute is falling apart, just like everything else. He sets the broken string aside and runs his fingers over the remaining strings, plucking one gently. It produces a thin, mournful sound that hangs in the air for a moment before fading. What's the point? He says, his voice barely above a whisper. Without all the strings, it's not a lute. It's just a piece of wood with some wires. Kato has spent years mastering the lute, studying with the finest teachers, practicing for hours each day, honing his technique until his fingers move over the strings without conscious thought. His music has always been his refuge, his way of expressing. What words cannot, his connection to something larger than himself. But now, with his instrument broken, that connection feels severed, leaving a void that even the memory of past music cannot fill. The emptiness he feels is the emptiness of a lost purpose, the sense that the thing that gives his life meaning has been taken away, that the skill he has spent a lifetime developing is suddenly useless, that he is adrift without the anchor of his music. It is the same emptiness a painter might feel if his hands were broken, a writer if he lost his ability to speak, a parent if their child was taken away. It is the emptiness of identity dissolving when the thing that defines it is removed. Soft knock at the door makes Cato jump, as if he has forgotten that the world exists beyond his broken instrument. He stands slowly, his movements heavy, and opens the door to find an old woman standing on the threshold, her white hair pulled back in a bun, a basket of vegetables in her hands. She is the village herbalist, known for her wisdom and her ability to heal both body and spirit with her remedies. "Good afternoon, Cato," she says, her voice warm and steady. "I heard your playing earlier." It sounded troubled. Cato steps aside to let her in, his face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm sorry if I disturbed you, Obasan. I didn't mean to play so poorly." The old woman sets her basket on the table and turns to look at the lute, its broken strings hanging loose like untied shoelaces. "Ah," she says, nodding. "The lute is unwell." "It's broken," Kaito says, the word tasting bitter in his mouth. "The strings keep snapping. I can't fix it in time for the concert tomorrow. I've let everyone down." The herbalist picks up the lute gently, as if it were a living thing, and examines it, turning it in her hands, running her fingers over the wood, which is smooth and worn from years of use. "It's a beautiful instrument," she says, her voice soft with appreciation. "You can feel the care that went into making it the way the wood curves, the precision of the sound hole, the attention to every detail." "It was beautiful," Cato corrects her. "Now it's just broken." The old woman sets the lute down and pulls a small pouch from her basket, opening it to reveal a handful of dried herbs, lavender, chamomile, something with a pungent, earthy scent. "When I was a girl," she says, as she begins to prepare a tea, "my grandmother taught me to listen to plants. She said that sometimes they reveal their secrets, not when they're healthy and strong, but when they're struggling, when a storm has broken their branches, when drought has withered their leaves. It's in their brokenness that their true nature is revealed." She pours hot water into a clay cup and adds a pinch of herbs, stirring slowly. "Perhaps it's the same with instruments. Maybe the lute is trying to tell you something in its brokenness that it couldn't when it was whole." Cato scoffs, but there is a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. What could a broken lute possibly have to say? The herbalist hands in the cup of tea, its steam rising in thin spirals, carrying the scent of calm. "Drink," she says, "and listen, not with your ears, but with your heart." Cato takes a sip, the warmth of the tea spreading through his chest, and for a moment, he allows himself to be present, to feel the weight of the cup in his hands, to smell the herbs, to hear the wind rustling the leaves outside the window. It has been a long time since he has simply been without the pressure to perform, to create, to be the musician everyone expects him to be. The old woman sits down beside him, her posture straight but relaxed, and closes her eyes, as if listening to something only she can hear. "Do you hear it?" she asks after a moment. "Hear what?" Cato says, looking around the room. "The wind? The birds?" "The house," she says. "The floorboards creaking, the fire crackling in the hearth, the air moving through the windows. It's like music, if you listen closely enough." Cato listens, really listens, and for the first time, he notices the symphony of sounds he has always taken for granted: the ticking of the old clock on the wall, the distant bark of a dog, the soft rustle of the herbalist's breathing. They are not musical notes, not arranged in any particular order, but there is a rhythm to them, a harmony that he has never appreciated before. The Buddha taught that all things are interconnected, that there is no separation between the observer and the observed, between the musician and the music, between the lute and the air that carries its sound. In the Udana, he says, just as a great river has a single taste, the taste of water, so too does the Dharma and discipline expounded by the Tathagata have a single taste, the taste of liberation. This liberation comes when we let go of our fixed ideas about what things should be and learn to appreciate them for what they are, including the beauty of broken things, the music of silence, the emptiness that allows sound to exist. From a Zoon psychological perspective, Cato is trapped in what psychologists call functional fixedness, the inability to see an object as having any purpose other than the one it was designed for. He sees the lute only as an instrument that requires all its strings to produce music and cannot imagine any other way for it to be useful or meaningful. This cognitive bias limits his creativity, his ability to adapt, his capacity to find new meaning in a changed situation. A herbalist is helping him overcome this bias by encouraging him to expand his perception, to see the lute not just as a tool for producing music, but as an object with its own inherent beauty, as part of a larger soundscape that includes the sounds of the house, the wind, the world beyond his cottage. This is the psychological equivalent of the Buddhist concept of sunyata emptiness, not as a void, but as a space of infinite possibility, where things are not fixed in their identity, but can be seen in new ways. Look at the sound hole, the herbalist says, pointing to the small, round opening in the body of the lute. It's empty, but without that emptiness, the music couldn't resonate. The sound would be thin, lifeless. The emptiness is what makes the music full. Kaito looks at the sound hole, the dark emptiness at the center of the instrument, and thinks of all the times he has played without noticing it, without appreciating the role it plays in creating the music he loves. It's just a hole, he says, but his voice is less certain. It's the most important part, the herbalist says. Without it, the lute is just a box. With it, it's alive. Emptiness gives it life. She stands and walks to the window, looking out at the valley below, where the light is beginning to fade, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The wind is picking up, she says. Listen to how it sounds as it blows through the trees, through the chimney, through the cracks in the window frames. Kato listens, and as he does, he notices something strange. The wind, as it passes through the open sound hole of the lute, produces a soft, haunting tone like a distant flute or a singing bowl. It is not a melody, not a tune he recognizes, but it is beautiful in its simplicity, in its imperfection, in its connection to the natural world. He picks up the lute, holding it gently, and turns it slightly, angling the sound hole toward the window. The tone changes, deepening, resonating more strongly in the body of the instrument. It is as if the lute is singing, not through its strings, but through its emptiness, through the space that was always there, but he had never thought to use. This is amazing, he says, his eyes wide with wonder. I never heard anything like it. The herbalist smiles. The music was always there, Kato. You just needed to listen differently. Sometimes the most profound music comes not from what is added strings, notes, melodies, but from what is already present, the emptiness, the silence, the wind that moves through it. This is the wisdom of wabi-sabi, the Japanese aesthetic, that finds beauty in imperfection, in transience, in the natural cycle of growth and decay. It is the recognition that broken things have their own beauty, that emptiness is not a lack, but a presence. That silence is an essential part of music. Kato spends the rest of the afternoon experimenting with the broken lute, holding it in different ways, moving it to different parts of the room, discovering how the wind and the sounds of the house interact with its emptiness to create new, unexpected tones. He finds that by plucking the remaining string occasionally, he can create a counterpoint to the natural sounds, a dialogue between human artistry and the music of nature. He realizes that his music has always been too controlled, too focused on perfection, too concerned with playing the right notes. The broken lute, with its limitations, its dependence on the wind and the world around it, is teaching him to let go, to collaborate with nature rather than trying to control it, to find beauty in imperfection rather than striving for an impossible ideal. From a psychological perspective, Kato is experiencing what is known as post-traumatic growth, the positive psychological change that occurs as a result of struggling with a difficult challenge. Research shows that many people who experience significant losses or setbacks report increased resilience, greater appreciation for life, and a deeper sense of meaning. They find new ways of being that are more authentic, more flexible, more connected to what truly matters. As evening falls, the herbalist prepares to leave, gathering her basket and heading toward the door. "What will you do about the concert tomorrow?" she asks, pausing in the doorway. Ko looks at the broken lute, now resting on the table, its sound hole catching a last light of the day. "I don't know," he says, but his voice is calm, curious, not filled with fear. "I think I'll bring the lute, if that's all right. Maybe I'll play something different." The old woman smiles. The best music is always different. It comes from the heart, not from the strings. After she leaves, Kato sits in the quiet cottage, the broken lute beside him, and listens to the night sounds, the crickets chirping, the owl hooting in the distance, the wind whistling through the trees. He feels a sense of peace he hasn't felt in years, a freedom from the pressure to be perfect, to perform, to meet expectations. The emptiness left by the broken strings has been filled not with frustration, but with possibility, not with silence, but with a new kind of music. The next day, Kato walks to the village square, where a stage has been set up for the concert. The governor's chair placed at the front, surrounded by his advisors and officials. The other musicians are already tuning their instruments, lutes, with all their strings intact, flutes, drums, a small choir. They look at Kato's broken lute with curiosity and concern, but he meets their gazes with a calm smile, knowing that what he has to offer is not less than their perfect music, just different. When it is his turn to play, Kaito steps onto the stage and sits down, placing the broken lute on his lap. The crowd murmurs, confused, and he sees the governor lean forward, his eyebrows raised in question. But Kato closes his eyes for a moment, takes a deep breath, and begins. He doesn't try to play a traditional melody. Instead, he holds the lute in such a way that the afternoon breeze, blowing across the square, passes through its sound hole, producing a soft, haunting tone. Every now and then, he plucks the remaining string, a single note that hangs in the air before merging back into the wind's song. He moves the lute slightly, changing the tone, creating a rhythm that responds to the wind, to the sounds of the crowd, to the world around him. At first, the crowd is silent, unsure of what to make of this strange music. But gradually, they begin to listen to the interplay between the lute's emptiness and the wind's movement, to the way the single string punctuates the silence, to the beauty of something imperfect and transient. By the end, there is no applause, just a moment of profound stillness, as if everyone is holding their breath, reluctant to break the spell. Then, slowly, the governor stands and begins to clap. The rest of the crowd follows, their applause growing until it fills the square, warm and genuine. Kaito stands, bows deeply, and walks off the stage, his heart light, his mind clear, knowing that he has found a new kind of music, a music that comes not from perfection, but from imperfection, not from fullness, but from emptiness, not from control, but from surrender, the Buddha taught. In the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. Attributed to the Buddha in various teachings, Cato has learned to let go of his attachment to the perfect lute, to the perfect music, to the perfect version of himself, and in doing so, he has found a deeper kind of freedom, a more authentic kind of expression, a music that is not just played, but lived. Take a moment now to think of something in your life that feels broken, a relationship, a dream, a part of yourself that you think is flawed or inadequate. Now, imagine approaching it with the same curiosity Cato felt when he listened to the wind through his broken lute. What might it have to teach you? What beauty might be hidden in its imperfection? What new possibilities might emerge from its limitations? Breathe deeply as you consider these questions, letting your inhale fill you with openness, your exhale release any judgment or resistance. Feel yourself softening toward the brokenness, seeing it not as a failure, but as a teacher, not as an end, but as a beginning. This is the gift of the unstrung lute. It teaches us that emptiness, the space where strings used to be, the silence between notes, the brokenness we try to hide, is not a void to be filled, but a source of new life, new music, new ways of being. It reminds us that sometimes what we think is the end of our song is actually the beginning of a more beautiful, more authentic melody. Peace comes from within. Let this truth resonate in the emptiness, as loud and clear as the wind through a lute. Peace comes from within. Now, let us leave the cottage behind, with its broken lute and its lessons in finding beauty in imperfection. Let the sound of the wind through the sound hole fade, and let your senses turn toward a small studio at the edge of the village, where a painter sits before a blank canvas, his brush hovering in the air, his mind as empty as the canvas, his heart filled with the fear of making a mark. As we walk toward the studio, feel the ground beneath your feet grow covered with small stones, the air filled with the scent of ink and paper. In this space, we will learn that sometimes the most powerful art comes not from filling every inch of the canvas, but from leaving space, from trusting the emptiness to speak as loudly as the brushstrokes. But before we arrive, take one more deep breath and let yourself be as open and empty as the sound hole of a lute, ready to receive whatever music the wind brings. Just breathe, just be, just let the silence sing. Breathe in and breathe out, and let us continue. The scent of rosemary and lavender fades as we walk toward the painter's studio, replaced by the sharp, earthy aroma of ink and the faint sweetness of rice paper. The path beneath our feet grows uneven, scattered with small stones and shards of pottery, remnants of the artist's work, perhaps, or discarded tools of creation. To our left, a field of wildflowers sways in the breeze, their colors so vivid they seem to have been dipped in the same pigments the painter uses. The studio comes into view, a low, rectangular building with walls made of bamboo slats, allowing the light to filter through in thin, golden strips. The roof is thatched with straw, its edges curling slightly from years of rain and sun. Outside, leaning against the wall, are several finished paintings, landscapes of the valley, portraits of village residents, still lifes of fruit and flowers, each one vibrant and full, leaving no space untouched by color. But inside, the atmosphere is different. The air feels heavy with tension, as if the very molecules are holding their breath. Sunlight streams through the bamboo slats, casting long shadows across the wooden floor, where a single canvas stands on an easel, its surface pure and white, untouched by brush or pigment. Before it stands a man named Ren, his back to us, his posture rigid with concentration, or perhaps fear. He is a painter of considerable talent, known for his ability to capture the essence of a scene in vibrant detail, leaving no inch of canvas uncovered. His hands are stained with ink, his fingers long and slender, perfectly suited to holding. A brush, but today, that brush hovers in midair, trembling slightly as if the weight of it is too much to bear. It's just a blank canvas, Ren mutters to himself, his voice tight. You've painted hundreds of them, thousands. Why is this one different? He steps back, running a hand through his hair, which is tied back in a messy ponytail. His eyes dart around the studio, taking in the completed paintings, the jars of ink, the stacks of paper, as if searching for something to give him courage. The exhibition is in 3 days, he says, his voice rising with panic. Everyone is expecting something great, something full. Ren has always believed that a painting's value lies in its completeness, in how much of the canvas it fills, how many details it contains, how little empty space remains. To him, emptiness in art is a failure, a sign of laziness or lack of vision. He has spent years perfecting his ability to cover every inch with color and form, to leave no room for doubt or interpretation doubt. But today, as he looks at the blank canvas, he feels a strange reluctance to fill it. It's not that he lacks ideas. His mind is filled with images. The mountain at dawn, the stream we crossed earlier, the old herbalist's face lined with wisdom. It's that none of these images seem right, as if forcing them onto the canvas would be an act of violence, a violation of the canvas's perfect emptiness. The emptiness he feels now is not the emptiness of lost purpose, like Cato's, but the emptiness of possibility, the overwhelming sense that anything could be created, and thus nothing should be created. It is the fear of making the wrong choice, of ruining the perfect blankness with an imperfect mark. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis, the state where overthinking a decision leads to inability to make any decision at all. But a soft rustling sound behind him makes Ren jump. He turns to find an old monk standing in the doorway, his gray robes billowing slightly in the breeze that flows through the studio. The monk is a frequent visitor to the village, known for his love of art and his ability to see beyond the surface of things. He carries a small scroll under his arm, his posture calm and relaxed. "Good day, painter," the monk says, bowing slightly. "I see you are in conversation with your canvas." Ren feels his face flush with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, master. I didn't hear you come in. I'm just struggling." The monk steps into the studio, his sandals making soft sounds on the wooden floor. He pauses to look at the completed paintings, nodding appreciatively. "These are beautiful," he says, "full of life and color. But there is something about them that feels crowded, as if they are holding their breath." Ren bristles slightly. "I believe a painting should be complete, whole. Empty space is wasted space." The monk turns to him, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Is that what you believe? Then perhaps you will help me understand something. I have a scroll here that has puzzled me for many years." He unrolls the scroll gently on a nearby table, revealing a simple ink painting, a single bamboo shoot, its leaves bending slightly in an unseen wind against a background of pure white paper. "There is much empty space here," the monk says, gesturing to the white areas. "Do you think the artist was lazy? That he lacked vision?" Ren studies the painting, his initial dismissal giving way to curiosity. The bamboo is rendered with exquisite care, each stroke deliberate and precise. But it occupies less than a quarter of the scroll, leaving vast expanses of white. And yet, those white spaces do not feel wasted. They feel alive, as if they contain the air the bamboo breathes, the light that shines on it, the silence that surrounds it. "No," Ren says finally. "It's not laziness. The empty space, it's part of the painting. It makes the bamboo stand out, gives it room to breathe." "Ah," the monk says, smiling. "So emptiness can have purpose. It can enhance what is present, rather than diminish it." He rolls the scroll up again, carefully. "This painting is by a Zen master named Singai Jiben, who understood that sometimes what is not painted is as important as what is. He called this Ma, asked the space between things, the silence between notes, the emptiness that gives form to form. The concept of Mar is central to Japanese aesthetics, but it is also deeply rooted in Buddhist philosophy. The Buddha taught that form and emptiness are not opposites, but interdependent. In the Heart Sutra, he says, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra. This means that all things, including works of art, exist only in relation to their opposite. A painting's forms are defined by the empty space around them, just as a sound is defined by the silence that precedes and follows it. From a psychological perspective, Ren's discomfort with empty space reflects a deeper discomfort with uncertainty and ambiguity. Research shows that many people have a need for closure, a desire for definite answers and clear outcomes, even if those outcomes are imperfect. This need is rooted in our brain's desire to reduce cognitive dissonance and create a sense of order in a chaotic world. For Ren, filling the canvas completely is a way to create that sense of closure, to eliminate ambiguity and uncertainty. But the monk is inviting Ren to embrace ambiguity, to find beauty in the space between definition and possibility. This is what psychologists call tolerance for ambiguity, the ability to accept uncertainty without feeling anxious or threatened. Studies show that people with high tolerance for ambiguity are more creative, more adaptable, and better able to solve complex problems. "Try something for me," the monk says, handing Ren a small brush and a jar of ink. "Make one mark on the canvas, just one." Ren hesitates, his hand trembling. But that's not enough. It would be incomplete, meaningless. Is it meaningless? The monk asks. A single star in the sky is not meaningless because there are other stars. A single word in a poem is not meaningless because there are other words. Sometimes one mark is enough to change everything. Ren takes a deep breath, dips the brush in the ink, and makes a single, bold stroke across the canvas, a curved line that could be a mountain ridge, a wave, a smile, or nothing at all. As soon as the ink touches the canvas, he feels a strange sense of relief, as if a weight has been lifted from his shoulders. "And now?" the monk asks. "It's just a line," Ren says, but he finds himself drawn to it, studying its shape, its thickness, the way the ink fades slightly. At the edges, look at the space around it, the monk says. Before, the canvas was just empty. Now, the space around the line has meaning. It is no longer just emptiness. It is the space around the line. It defines the line, gives it form, makes it visible. Ren steps back, looking at the canvas with new eyes. The monk is right. The single line has transformed the emptiness, giving it purpose and meaning. The canvas is no longer blank. It is a dialogue between form and emptiness, presence and absence. "Now, what do you see?" the monk asks. Ren looks at the line, and suddenly he sees a mountain range, its peaks rising gently against the sky. He sees the space above the line as the sky vast and blue, and the space below as the valley where the village lies. "I see mountains," he says, surprised by the clarity of the image. "Then paint what you see," the monk says, "but leave room for the sky to breathe. Leave room for the viewer to imagine what lies beyond the mountains." Ren picks up his brush, but this time his hand is steady. He dips it in the ink and begins to paint, but not with his usual urgency to fill the canvas. He moves slowly, deliberately, adding details to the mountain range, but leaving large areas of the canvas untouched. He paints a small figure climbing the mountain, its size emphasizing the vastness of the space around it. He adds a few birds in the sky, their forms simple, almost abstract. allowing the white of the canvas to show through Dot as he paints. Ren feels a sense of freedom he has never experienced before. He is not trying to control the canvas, but to collaborate with it, to respect its emptiness as much as his own creativity. He realizes that his previous paintings, while technically skilled, were suffocating both for him and for the viewer, because they left no room for imagination, no space to breathe, no opportunity for the viewer to bring their own meaning to the work. This is the psychological principle of co-creation, the idea that art is not just created by the artist, but completed by the viewer, who brings their own experiences, emotions, and interpretations to the work. By leaving space in his painting, Ren is inviting the viewer to participate in its creation, to become an active collaborator rather than a passive observer. The monk watches silently, his presence a calm anchor. In the studio, he sees Ren's posture relax, his breathing deepen, his face soften as he lets go of his need for control. He sees the painter moving from a state of resistance to a state of flow, a psychological state where action and awareness merge, where creativity flows effortlessly, where the self-conscious mind gives way to intuitive expression. When Ren finally sets down his brush, the painting is unlike any he has created before. It is spare, elegant, with large areas of white canvas that feel as alive and purposeful as the inked areas. The mountains are suggested more than defined, their forms merging with the sky, inviting the viewer to imagine what lies beyond them. "It's empty," Ren says, but there is wonder in his voice, not criticism. "It is full of emptiness," the monk corrects him. "And in that emptiness, it is full of possibility." A painting that leaves nothing to the imagination is like a story that explains its moral satisfying in the moment, but quickly forgotten. A painting that leaves space invites the viewer to return, to see something new each time, to make it their own. The Buddha taught that all perception is subjective, that we see the world not as it is, but as we are. In the Vimalakirti Sutra, he says, "The nature of things is like a dream. Although it appears, it is not real." This means that reality is not fixed, but is co-created by the observer and the observed. Ren's painting, with its empty spaces, acknowledges this truth, inviting each viewer to co-create its meaning. As the sun begins to set, casting the studio in warm, golden light, the monk prepares to leave. He pauses beside the painting, smiling softly. "You have learned an important lesson today, painter," he says. "The lesson that emptiness is not absence, but presence, the presence of possibility, of invitation, of trust in the viewer's imagination." Ren nods, looking at his painting with a sense of peace. "I always thought that to be a good artist, I needed to fill every space, to control every perception. But now I see that true artistry is knowing when to stop, when to let the emptiness speak." The monk bows slightly. Remember this lesson in your life as well as in your art. Not every silence needs to be filled with words. Not every moment needs to be filled with activity. Not every heart needs to be filled with plans. Sometimes the most meaningful things are found in the spaces between words, between actions, between thoughts. This is the wisdom of Ma, the understanding that emptiness is an essential part of life, not a void to be filled. It is the pause between breaths, the silence between heartbeats, the space between moments that gives life its rhythm and depth. Ren hangs the painting in the exhibition 3 days later, alongside his more detailed works. To his surprise, it is this spare, empty painting that generates the most conversation, that draws people back again and again, that seems to touch something deep within them. One elderly woman stands before it for a long time, then turns to Ren with tears in her eyes. "It reminds me of my childhood home," she says. "The mountains behind our village looked just like this at dawn. I haven't thought of it in years." A young boy sees not mountains, but waves, and tells Ren an elaborate story about a ship sailing to distant lands. A traveler sees the path he will take tomorrow, winding up into the mountains, full of unknown adventures. Ren realizes that the painting has become a mirror, reflecting back to each viewer their own memories, dreams, and desires. It is not a fixed thing, but a living, breathing dialogue between his creativity and theirs. Take a moment now to imagine a blank canvas in front of you. It could be a literal canvas, or it could be the canvas of your life a day without plans. A relationship without expectations, a mind without worries. What does this emptiness feel like? Is it scary or is it liberating? What possibilities does it hold? Breathe deeply into that feeling, letting your inhale fill you with openness. Your exhale release any need to control or fill the space. Imagine making one small mark, one choice, one action, one word, and notice how it transforms the emptiness around it, giving it meaning and purpose without destroying its essential nature. This is the gift of the unpainted canvas. It teaches use that emptiness is not a failure, but a foundation, that what we leave out is as important as what we put in. That silence can speak louder than words. That sometimes the most profound creativity comes not from filling every space, but from trusting the space to hold meaning on its own. Peace comes from within. Let this truth settle into the empty spaces of your life. As gently as ink on paper, peace comes from within. Now, let us leave the painter's studio behind, with its lessons in the beauty of emptiness and the power of Ma. Let the scent of ink fade, and let your senses turn toward a small temple at the top of the mountain, where a group of monks sits in meditation, their minds as still as the surface of a lake, their hearts as open as the sky dot as we climb the winding path to the temple. Feel your breath deepen, your steps slow, your mind quiet. In this space, we will learn that the ultimate emptiness is not in art or music or any external form, but in the quiet of our own minds that the most profound peace comes. When we stop trying to fill ourselves and simply allow ourselves to be. Before we arrive, take one more deep breath and let yourself be as open and empty as the blank canvas, ready to receive whatever life brings. Just breathe, just be, just exist in the beautiful space between what was and what will be. Breathe in and breathe out, and let us continue. The path to the temple grows steeper as we climb, each step requiring a little more effort, a little more focus. The air thins, carrying the crisp, clean scent of pine and the distant metallic tang of temple bells. Below us, the valley spreads. Out like a green carpet, the village a cluster of tiny dots, the stream a silver ribbon winding through the landscape. It feels as if we are leaving the world behind, ascending into a space of greater clarity, greater stillness. The temple comes into view suddenly, its red-painted gates standing out against the green of the forest, their wooden beams carved with intricate patterns, dragons, lotus flowers, symbols of peace and prosperity. A stone lantern stands beside the gate, its glass panels glowing softly in the afternoon light, as if holding a piece of the sun. Beyond the gates, we can see a courtyard paved with smooth stones, their surfaces worn by centuries of footsteps, and a main hall with a curved roof that seems to reach toward the sky dot. As we step through the gates, the world falls silent. The sounds of the valley bird song, wind, the distant murmur of voices fade into a soft hum, as if filtered through a veil. The only sounds are the gentle rustle of monks' robes, the slow drip of water from a stone fountain in the center of the courtyard, and the occasional toll of a bell, deep and resonant, marking the passage of time dot in the main hall. A group of monks sits cross-legged on woven mats, their backs straight, their eyes closed, their hands resting gently on their laps. They are engaged in Zazen, seated meditation, a practice that has been passed down through generations, a way of quieting the mind, of cultivating stillness, of encountering the emptiness at the core of being dot at the front of the hall, facing. The monks sits an elderly monk, his face calm and serene, his posture perfect after decades of practice. This is Master Sho, the abbot of the temple, known throughout the region for his wisdom and his ability to guide others in the practice of meditation. His eyes are open, but they seem to look beyond the physical space of the hall, as if seeing into a deeper reality. We find a quiet corner at the back of the hall, sitting down on a mat and allowing ourselves to become part of the stillness. At first, the silence feels uncomfortable, as if there is something missing, something we need to fill. Our minds race, jumping from thought to thought, planning, remembering, worrying. Old habits die hard. But gradually, as we listen to the monk's steady breathing, as we feel the cool stone beneath our mats, as we let ourselves be held by the quiet, our minds begin to settle. Like sediment in a glass of water, not one of the monks, a young man named Kenji, sits near us. His eyes are closed, but his brow is furrowed, as if he is struggling with his thoughts. We can see his fingers tapping slightly on his thigh, a nervous habit that betrays his inner restlessness. Kenji has been at the temple for only a few months, drawn to the practice after a difficult period in his life-failed relationships, a career that left him unfulfilled, a sense that something essential was missing. "I thought meditation would make the thoughts go away," Kenji whispers to himself, his lips barely moving. But they just keep coming, faster and faster. "It's like trying to stop a river with my hands." Master Sho, as if sensing Kenji's struggle, opens his eyes and looks directly at him. "Kenji," he says, his voice soft but clear, cutting through the silence without disturbing it. "What do you do when a guest comes to your door?" Kenji opens his eyes, startled. I welcome them, Master. I offer them tea, listen to what they have to say." "And do you try to force them to stay, or to leave before they are ready?" "Of course not, Master. That would be rude." "Then why do you treat your thoughts this way?" Master Sho asks. "Why do?" "You struggle against them, try to push them away, as if they are unwelcome guests. Let them come, let them be, let them go. They are just visitors, passing through. They are not the house itself." Kenji closes his eyes again, his brow smoothing, as he considers the Master's words. We can see a subtle shift in his posture, a relaxation in his shoulders, as he begins to practice what Master Sho has taught, allowing his thoughts to come and go without resistance, without judgment, without becoming entangled in them. This is the essence of Zazen, not to empty the mind, but to make peace with it. It is not about stopping thought, but about creating a space around thought, a distance between ourselves and our mental activity. It is about realizing that we are not our thoughts, any more than we are the visitors who come to our door. The Buddha taught this same principle in his instructions on mindfulness of breathing, or anapanasati. In the Anapanasati Sutta, he describes how to observe the breath without controlling it, how to notice thoughts and feelings without becoming lost in them. Just as a skilled turner or his apprentice can turn a lathe and make it go around by controlling it, he says, so too, a monk, focusing on the body, can calm the mental disturbances that arise from the body. From a neurological perspective, meditation activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain associated with attention, self-awareness, and emotional regulation, while reducing activity in the default mode network, which is responsible for mind-wandering and self-referential thinking. This shift helps explain the sense of calm and clarity that comes with regular practice, as well as the ability to observe thoughts without becoming consumed by them. As the afternoon turns to evening, the monks rise from their meditation, moving slowly, deliberately, as if each movement is a continuation of their stillness. They walk to the dining hall for a simple meal of rice, vegetables, and tea, eating in silence, their attention focused on the taste, the texture, the act of nourishing their bodies. Afterward, Kenji approaches Master Sho, who is standing on the Kono temple porch, looking out at the sunset. The sky is ablaze with color orange, pink, purple, casting the mountains in a golden light. "Master," Kenji says, "I think I understand now. The emptiness we seek in meditation is not the absence of thoughts, but the space in which thoughts can exist without defining us. It is like the sky, the clouds come and go, but the sky remains unchanged." Master Sho smiles. "The sky does not try to get rid of the clouds, Kenji. It holds them, allows them to be, lets them pass through. That is its nature. And that is our nature too, if we can remember it." He turns to look at Kenji, his eyes warm with kindness. "What do you feel when you allow yourself to be that sky, rather than the clouds?" Kenji closes his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. "I feel free," he says, his voice soft with wonder. "Light, as if I have been carrying a burden I didn't even know was there." This is the psychological experience of decentering, the ability to see thoughts and feelings as temporary mental events, rather than as absolute truths or defining characteristics. Research shows that decentering is a key factor in reducing anxiety and depression, as it allows us to create distance from negative thoughts and emotions, reducing their power over us. Over the next few weeks, Kenji continues his practice gradually, learning to rest in the stillness beneath the thoughts, to trust the emptiness that is his true nature. He finds that the more he practices, the less he is troubled by the ups and downs of his mind, the more he is able to remain calm and centered in the face of difficulty. One morning, as the monks sit in meditation, a storm breaks over the mountain. Thunder booms, lightning flashes, rain pounds against the roof of the hall. Some of the newer monks startle, their concentration broken, but Kenji remains still, his breathing steady, his mind calm. He hears the thunder, feels the vibrations in the floor, but he does not become the thunder. He is the space in which the thunder exists, the stillness beneath the storm. After meditation, Master Sho looks at Kenji and nods. "You have learned to be the mountain, not the storm," he says. "The mountain stands firm, unshaken by the wind and rain, because it is rooted in the earth. You too are rooted in the earth, of your own being, in the emptiness that is stronger than any storm." This is the ultimate wisdom of the temple, to realize that the emptiness we seek is not outside us, in art or music or nature, but within us, as the very ground of our being. It is the stillness beneath the activity, the silence beneath the noise, the presence beneath the thoughts and feelings that come and go. The Buddha expressed this in the Diamond Sutra. "All conditioned things are like a dream, a phantom, a drop of dew, a flash of lightning. You should view them this way." Vajra Kidika Prajnaparamita Sutra. This does not mean that life is illusory, but that it is impermanent, ever-changing, and that our true nature is the empty space in which all these changes occur, the space that is not affected by them. That remains unchanged through all the ups and downs of life. As we prepare to leave the temple, the sun sets, painting the sky in brilliant hues. The monks gather in the courtyard for evening chants, their voices rising together in a beautiful, haunting melody that seems to merge with the sounds of the mountain, the wind in the pines, the distant call of a night bird, the gentle rustle of leaves. Kenji stands among them, his face calm and radiant, his eyes shining with the light of understanding. He has found what he was looking for, not in the absence of difficulty, but in the presence of stillness that remains even in the midst of difficulty, not in the end of thought, but in the realization that he is more than his thoughts. Take a moment now to sit quietly, closing your eyes if you feel comfortable, and simply breathe. Notice the thoughts that arise, but do not engage with them. See them as clouds in the sky of your mind, as visitors at your door, as waves on the surface of the ocean. Beneath them, beneath the activity, there is a stillness, a silence, an emptiness that is your true nature. Breathe into that stillness. Let it expand. Feel it as the ground beneath your feet, the sky above your head, the space in which everything else exists. This is the emptiness we have been exploring throughout our journey. The emptiness that is full of possibility. The emptiness that is peace. The emptiness that is home. Peace comes from within. Let this truth settle into the very core of your being, as deeply as the roots of the mountain. Peace comes from within. Now, as we descend from the temple, let us carry this stillness with us, like a candle flame protected from the wind. Let us remember that the emptiness we seek is always within us, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be trusted, waiting to be lived. The path down the mountain is the same as the path up, but we walk it differently, more slowly, more mindfully, more aware of each step, each breath, each moment. We have not found all the answers, but we have found something more precious, the courage to live with the questions, to rest in the emptiness, to trust the journey. Breathe in and breathe out. And may we all find peace in the stillness, wisdom in the emptiness, and freedom in simply being. The descent from the temple feels different from the ascent. Our steps are lighter, not because the path has grown easier, but because something within us has shifted, like carrying a backpack that gradually emptied itself along the way. The mountain air, once crisp and invigorating, now feels familiar, as if we've breathed it all our lives. The sounds of the valley, which faded as we climbed, returned gently. A farmer calling to his ox, a child laughing, the creak of a cart. Wheel on a dirt road. These are not distractions from stillness, we realize, but expressions of its stillness in motion. Emptiness taking form not by the time we reach the village. The sun has dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in soft pastels. The cottages glow with warm light, windows framing scenes of daily life. A family gathered around a table, a woman mending clothes, a man stoking a fire. These are not grand moments, not profound realizations, but they hold a quiet beauty. Reminder that emptiness, the stillness we found in the temple, is not reserved for mountaintops and meditation halls. It lives in the ordinary, in the gaps between moments, in the simple act of being alive. We find ourselves outside the home of the herbalist who helped Cato, the musician with the broken lute. Her door is open, and we can see her standing at a wooden table, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. The rhythmic motion, circular, steady, unhurried, looks almost like a form of meditation. She glances up as we approach, her eyes crinkling with a smile. "Welcome back," she says, as if she'd been expecting us. "Would you like some tea? I've just brewed a batch of chamomile, with a hint of mint from the garden." We accept, sitting down on a bench by the door as she pours the tea into earthenware cups. The steam rises, carrying the scent of calm, and for a moment, no one speaks. The silence is comfortable, not empty, a reminder that words are not always needed to fill space. "Did you learn what you came to learn?" She asks finally, her voice soft. We think of the mirror, the archer, the scholar, the stream, the lute, the canvas, the temple. We think of emptiness not as absence, but as presence, as the space that allows everything else to exist. I think. We learned that emptiness is everywhere, we say, if we know how to see it. The herbalist nods, tapping a finger against her teacup. Most people spend their lives running from emptiness. They fill their days with noise, their minds with plans, their hearts with wants, afraid that if they stop, they'll find nothing. There. But nothing is the wrong word. It's not nothing. It's everything. She gestures to the mortar and pestle, where herbs have been ground into a fine powder. Look at this. I started with leaves and stems form. I ground them down, breaking. them apart until they seem to disappear emptiness. But when I steep them in hot water, they become something new. Tea. Form arises from emptiness, returns to it, and arises again. That's the dance of daily life. This is the wisdom of Praditya Samputa-dependent origination, the Buddhist, teaching that all things arise in dependence on other things, that form and emptiness are not opposites, but partners in an endless dance. A cup is useful not because of the clay that forms it, but because of the emptiness it contains. A conversation is meaningful not just for the words spoken, but for the silence between them. A life gains depth not from constant activity, but from the stillness that makes activity possible. A young mother walks by, carrying a crying baby. She pauses, looking frazzled, and the herbalist stands, handing her a small sachet of herbs. "Lavender," she says. "Put it under the baby's pillow tonight. And breathe, just breathe. The crying will pass, and so will the quiet. Both are part of it." The mother nods, looking grateful, and continues down the road. We watch her go, thinking of how easily we mistake the temporary for the permanent. Babies cry for a problem, the silence for a solution. But life is a series of transitions. Form to emptiness, noise to stillness, joy to sorrow, and back again. To resist this is to struggle against the current. To embrace it is to flow. From a psychological perspective, this is the practice of acceptance. Not resignation, but the willingness to meet life as it is, rather than as we wish it to be. Research shows that acceptance is linked to greater well-being, reduced stress, and improved relationships. It allows us to respond to life's challenges with flexibility, rather than reacting with rigidity. When we accept the crying baby, the broken lute, the empty canvas, we stop seeing them as obstacles and start seeing them as part of the dance. The herbalist turns back to her herbs, grinding a new batch this time, something with a pungent, earthy scent. "I used to think healing was about fixing what's broken," she says, as if sharing a secret. But it's not. It's about remembering that brokenness is just a form of emptiness, and emptiness is where healing begins. A bone needs space to knit back together. A heart needs space to let go of what hurts. A mind needs space to stop thinking and start knowing. This echoes what the monk said in the temple, that the body, like the mind, finds balance not by filling emptiness, but by resting in it. The herbalist's work is not just about herbs and remedies, we realize, but about creating space for the body to heal, space for the heart to open, space for life to unfold as it will dot as night falls. Villagers begin gathering in the square for a festival, a celebration of the harvest, marked by music, dance, and food. We follow the sounds of laughter and drums, finding a spot on the edge of the crowd. Kaido is there, playing his broken lute not as a novelty, but as an instrument in its own right. The wind has died down, so he plucks the remaining string, gently letting the notes hang in the air, blending with the silence between them. The crowd listens, not with curiosity, but with understanding, as if they've learned to hear the music in emptiness too. Nearby, the painter Ren stands beside, a booth displaying his work. Among the vibrant landscapes and detailed portraits hangs the painting of mountains with vast empty spaces. A young couple stops to look at it, pointing and smiling. "It makes me think of our first hike together," the woman says. "Remember how we got lost and ended up sitting on a rock, watching the clouds? We didn't say anything for hours, but it was the best part of the trip." Ren nods, his face softening. "That's what I wanted," he says. "Not to paint the mountains, but to paint the space around them, the space where memories live." This is the magic of emptiness in daily life. It is a canvas for memory, a container for connection, a bridge between people. The empty spaces in Ren's painting, the silence between Kaito's notes, the pauses in our conversation with the herbalist, these are not gaps to be filled, but threads that weave us together. As the festival winds down, we find ourselves sitting on a bench with Master Sho, who has descended from the temple to join the celebration. He watches the villagers with a quiet smile, his eyes reflecting the light of the bonfire. Do you miss the stillness of the temple when you're here? We ask. He shakes his head. The stillness is here too. It's in the way that child laughs, without worrying about what comes next. It's in the way that old man tends his fire, focused only on the wood and the flame. It's in the way people come together, not because they have to, but because they want to. No plans, no expectations, just presence. He turns to us, his gaze steady. The mistake is thinking that emptiness is something we have to find in a temple, in a painting, in a moment of silence. But it's not something we find, it's something we are. It's the ground beneath our feet, the air we breathe, the awareness that allows us to experience life. We don't need to climb mountains to encounter it. We just need to remember that it's already here. This is the final lesson, the one that ties all the others together. Emptiness is not a destination, but a way of seeing. It is not something we practice in meditation and then leave behind in the world. It is the world seen clearly, without the filters of fear, desire, and expectation. It is the tea in the cup and the cup itself and the space the cup holds. It is the laughter and the silence after laughter and the person laughing. It is everything and it is nothing, and in that paradox lies its beauty. As we walk back to the herbalist's cottage, where we've been offered a place to stay, the village quiets around us. A few stragglers linger in the square, talking softly, their voices blending with the crackle of the dying bonfire. A dog trots past, tail wagging as if carrying a secret. The moon rises, casting silver light on the roofs and streets, turning ordinary things, a stone wall, a flower pot, a wooden door, into something luminous. We think of all the moments that brought us here, the mirror that showed us more in, emptiness than reflection, the archer who learned to find joy in flight rather than hitting, the scholar who emptied his cup to receive, the stream that taught us to flow around obstacles, the lute that sang through its brokenness, the canvas that breathed through its empty spaces, the temple that revealed stillness as our true nature. These are not just stories, we realize. They are invitations to see differently, to be differently, to meet life with an open hand rather than a closed fist. They remind us that emptiness is not a void to be feared, but a well to be drunk from, a source of strength, creativity, and peace. In the morning, we will leave the village, but we will carry it with us, not as a memory, but as a way of being. We will carry the mirror, the bow, the cup, the stream, the lute, the canvas, the temple in our bones. We will see emptiness in the rush of city streets, in the noise of a crowded room, in the chaos of a busy day, and we will know that it is not separate from these things, but the space that makes them possible. Peace comes from within. This truth, which we first heard in the dojo, now resonates in every part of us. It is not a phrase to be repeated, but a reality to be lived. Peace is not found in the absence of chaos, but in the emptiness that holds chaos and calm alike. As we prepare for sleep, listening to the soft sounds of the village at night, we take one last breath, a deep, slow breath, and let it go. In that exhale, we release everything: expectations, worries, plans. In the space that follows, the emptiness between breaths, we find exactly what we've been seeking all along. Not answers, not enlightenment, not perfection, but simply this moment, this breath, this life. Breathe in and breathe out. And may we all remember, in the busyness of daily life, that emptiness is not the end of the journey, but its beginning, and that in emptiness, we are never truly empty. We are full of possibility. We are full of life. We are full of peace. Dawn breaks over the village like a whispered secret, soft light seeping through the cracks in the herbalist's cottage walls, turning the dust motes in the air into tiny, glowing particles. We wake slowly, as if reluctant to leave the stillness. Of sleep, the kind of sleep that feels less like unconsciousness and more like a return to the emptiness we've been learning to trust. The herbalist is already up, her fire stoked, a pot of porridge simmering over the flames. She nods as we enter the main room, her eyes still heavy with sleep, but warm with recognition. "You're off then?" she says, ladling porridge into wooden bowls. We nod, thanking her for the meal, for the shelter, for the quiet wisdom she's shared. "What will you do now?" she asks, sitting across from us, her bowl untouched. We think of the road ahead, the miles of dirt and stone that will take us back to our own lives, our own villages, our own version of the ordinary. "I think we'll just walk," we say. "And see?" She smiles, as if that is the answer she'd been hoping for. That's the best way, isn't it? Not with a plan, but with an open road. The emptiness of the path is where the journey lives. We finish our porridge, pack our few belongings, and step outside into the cool morning air. The village is just waking up. A rooster crows, a door creaks open, a child's voice calls out. These sounds, once foreign, now feel like a farewell song. We walk past Cato's cottage, where his broken lute leans against the wall, catching the morning light. We pass Ren's studio, the door ajar, revealing a new blank canvas propped on his easel waiting, not empty. We pause at the edge of the village, looking back at the temple on the mountain, a small shape against the sky, and for a moment, we feel the thread that connects all of it. The mirror, the bow, the cup, the stream, the lute. The canvas, the temple, the village. Us. The road stretches ahead, winding through fields and forests, over hills and across streams. We walk without hurry, letting our steps fall where they will, letting our minds wander without resistance. Thoughts come and go, worries about what waits for us at home, memories of the people we've met, plans that tried to take root, but we let them pass, like clouds in the sky. We've learned that the mind is like the road, sometimes smooth, sometimes rough, sometimes straight, sometimes winding, but always just a path, not the destination. By midday, we reach a crossroads, where a small inn sits beneath a gnarled oak tree. A sign above the door reads, "The Empty Bowl," and we smile as if the world is winking at us. We enter, finding a handful of travelers gathered around tables, their voices mixing with the clatter of dishes and the crackle of the fire. A serving girl, her apron stained with broth, approaches, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Room for one?" she asks. "We're just passing through," we say. "A bowl of soup, if you have it." She nods, bustling off, and we find a table in the corner, watching the other travelers. A merchant sits alone, counting coins, his brow furrowed as if each one is a puzzle to solve. A pair of pilgrims share a plate of bread, their heads bent, together in conversation, their hands gesturing to a map spread out before them. A musician tunes a flute, his fingers moving over the holes with the same care Cato showed his lute. The serving girl returns with a bowl of soup rich, hearty, filled with vegetables and chunks of meat. Steam rises from it, carrying the scent of home, and we lift a spoonful to our lips, savoring the warmth, the flavor, the simple pleasure of being fed. "First time through here?" the merchant asks, looking up from his coins. We nod. "Coming from the village over the mountain," he snorts. "Nothing but trouble there. Last time I went, my cart broke down, lost a week of sales. Wasted space, if you ask me. The pilgrims over here," one of them speaking up, "we're headed that way. Heard there's a temple with wise monks, a healer with magic herbs. It's said they know something about peace," the merchant scoffs. Peace won't fill your pockets. Waste of time, if you ask me. We think of the herbalist's words. Most people spend their lives running from emptiness. They fill their days with noise, their minds with plans, their hearts with wants, afraid that if they stop, they'll find nothing there. But nothing is the wrong word. It's not nothing, it's everything. The musician, who has been quiet until now, starts to play his flute a simple melody, clear and unhurried, its notes hanging in the air like stars. The merchant stops counting his coins. The pilgrims fall silent. The serving girl pauses in her work. For a moment, no one speaks. The music is not grand or complex, but there is something in it, the space between the notes, the way it breathes, the emptiness it holds that feels like a prayer. When he finishes, the musician looks around as if surprised by the silence. My teacher used to say that a flute is just a stick with holes. He says, it's the emptiness inside that makes the music. Same with us, I reckon. This is the wisdom we carry now, that we are all flute sticks with holes and the emptiness. Inside us is what allows us to sing, to connect, to be alive. The merchant's coins, the pilgrim's map, the musician's flute, these are not separate from emptiness, but expressions of it, just as the mountain is an expression of the earth, just as the village is an expression of the valley. From a psychological perspective, this is the practice of mindfulness, not a special state reserved for meditation, but a way of engaging with life in each moment with openness and curiosity. Research shows that mindfulness reduces stress, improves focus, and increases emotional resilience by helping us stay grounded in the present rather than getting lost in the past or future. It is the ability to taste the soup, to hear the music, to listen to the merchant's complaint, all without judgment, without resistance, without losing ourselves in the story. We finish our soup, thank the serving girl, and step back onto the road. The sun is beginning to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. We walk for a while longer, then find a spot beneath a tree to rest, spreading our blanket on the grass, watching the stars come out one by one. A traveler passes by, a young woman with a backpack slung over her shoulder, her face lined with weariness, but her eyes bright. She pauses, as if debating whether to stop, and sits down beside us, offering a handful of nuts, which we share. Lost? We ask Dot. She laughs. A little. But I think that's the point, isn't it? If you're not lost, you're not really going anywhere. She looks up at the stars. My grandmother used to say that the stars are just holes in the sky, letting the light through. Emptiness, making light possible. We think of the painter's canvas, of the spaces between the stars, of the silence between heartbeats. She sounds wise, we say. She was, the woman says, her voice softening. She died last year, left me this. She pulls a small, empty locket from around her neck, opening it to reveal nothing but a tiny, folded piece of paper. Said it was her most precious possession. I used to think she was joking. An empty locket? But now I think I get it. It's empty, so I can fill it with whatever I want, memories, hopes, dreams. It's not empty at all. It's full of possibility. This is the final truth, the one that makes sense of all the others. Emptiness is possibility. It is the canvas waiting for paint, the locket waiting for memory, the heart waiting for love. It is not a void to be filled, but a space to be lived, in a space where life can unfold, where change can happen, where we can become more than we were. The woman stands, shouldering her backpack. Well, I should keep going. Wherever that is. She smiles. Thanks for the company. Sometimes it's nice to be lost with someone else. We watch her go, her figure growing smaller against the darkness, until she fades into the distance. We lie back, looking up at the stars, feeling the earth beneath us, the air around us, the silence within us. We are not home yet, but we are. Already there, in the emptiness that connects us to everything, in the stillness that is our true nature, in the simple, profound fact of being alive. In the morning, we pack our things and continue walking, the road stretching ahead, endless and full of promise. We don't know what waits for us at the end of it, reunions, challenges, joys, sorrows, but we walk anyway, because that is the way of things. One step after another, one breath after another, one moment after another, each one held in the emptiness that makes it possible. We pass through villages and cities, through forests and deserts, through rain and shine. We meet people who are running from emptiness and people who are embracing it, people who are full of noise and people who are full of silence. We learn that both are part of the dance, that there is no right way to be, no perfect path, no final destination. And when, after weeks of walking, we finally turn the corner and see our own village, our own home, our own front door, we pause, taking a deep breath, savoring the moment, the emptiness between the journey and the arrival, the space where one chapter ends and another begins. We open the door, step inside, and are greeted by the familiar sights and sounds of home. But nothing is quite the same. The empty chair by the fire is not just a chair, it is a space waiting for a visitor. The silence in the rooms is not just silence, it is a conversation between past and present. The ordinary moments, a cup of tea, a book on the table, a child's drawing on the wall, are all infused with something new. The recognition that emptiness is not elsewhere, not in a temple or a village or a distant mountain, but here, now, in the very fabric of our daily lives. Peace comes from within. We say it silently, not as a prayer, but as a reminder as we hang our coat on the hook, as we pour a glass of water, as we sit down in the empty chair by the fire. Peace is not something we bring home with us. It is home. It is the emptiness that has been here all along, waiting for us to notice, waiting for us to trust, waiting for us to live. And so we live in the emptiness, in the stillness, in the ordinary, extraordinary moments of daily life. We live with open hands, open hearts, open minds, letting life flow through us, letting change happen, letting ourselves be exactly who we are. Breathe in and breathe out. And may we all remember, always, that in emptiness, we are never alone. We are connected to everything, to everyone, to the very heart of life itself. We are full of possibility. We are full of life. We are full of peace. As we've journeyed through bamboo basket gaps, mirror voids, and unstrung melodies, you may have realized the emptiness within is a passage for light. What once felt like absence is life's truest state, like valleys that echo because they are. Empty skies that vast because they contain nothing. May these truths, like moonlight on a mountain stream, accompany your restful nights. When morning comes, go forth knowing emptiness is fullness, absence is presence. Thank you for sharing this journey from Zen Mind Temple. Good night.